منبر صوت الشعب، الراي والراي الآخر، شعب واحد ووطن واحد.
sorry معلش انا كنت ميوت. I mute myself. سوري هسه انتوا خليتوا امباسادور ايمانويل ودومينيك قاعد يتعبوا في نيتي هنا. يا انا قلت كلام كتير جدا يعني معلش يا اخوانا. sorry for the mistake. ده كلام عجيب جدا. Good morning, anyhow, good morning and good afternoon where you are. Welcome to the forum. صباح الخير وصباح النور للأهل بتاعتنا إنما كنتم في جميع أرجاء جنوب السودان. مرحبا بكم المشاهديننا في عاصمة جنوب السودان جوبا، ومشاهديننا من واو، وكذلك المشاهدين من رومبيك، ومشاهدين من واراب، والمشاهدين من توريد، والمشاهدين من يامبيو، مشاهديننا من أويل، وكذلك من بور، والمشاهدين بتاعنا برضو من بنتيو، والمشاهدين من ملكال POCs، مشاهدين بتاعنا من رنگ، وكذلك الناس المشاهدين من ناصر والمشاهدين من راجع. أنا بقول لكم كلكم سلام عليكم ومرحبا بكم في منبر صوت الشعب. الليلة طبعا عندنا حلقة أنا قاعد نفتكرها في إدارة صوت الشعب، بنفتكرها حلقة مهمة جدا، والأهمية بتاعت الحلقة بترجع إنه نحن خلال ال4 سنة اللي نحن كنا بنناقش في السوشيال ميديا، بدينا نغيف في بعض القضايا المهمة اللي نحن ممكن نفتكرها بتحدد مستقبل بتاع الدولة جنوب السودان، وبتحتم علينا كشعب بتاع جنوب السودان، وكذلك كمثقفين وكمواطنين ملتزمين أخلاقيا تجاه دولة جنوب السودان، إنه نحن نقيف ونناقش القضايا الأساسية اللي بتحدد مسير دولة جنوب السودان بكل صدق وبكل أمانة. نحن زي ما قلنا أول امبارح في الحلقة بتاع الليلة بتاع تحديدا ماشيين ندير الحوار في قضايا طرحها واحد من المفكرين، واحد من المثقفين، واحد من أكاديميين دولة جنوب السودان، Professor Peter Adwok Nyaba. Thank you so much for actually coming out this time and talking about your thought. نحن أنا نجيف وقفة مهمة جدا في بعض القضايا طرحها بروفيسور أدوك خلال ال3 الحلقات المشت. الحلقة الأولى كان اللي افتدر الحوار كان أستاذ الصحفي ماتيان شيرلو، ولاحقا أستاذ الصحفي مايكل كريستوفر برضو مشى وابتدر برضو حوار وأثاروا قضايا مهمة برضو زي ما القضايا اللي أثاروا ماتيان شيرلو. ده برضو لفت انتباهنا في منبر بتاع صوت الشعب إنه نحن we need to reach to Professor Adwok Nyaba and actually get inside about his ideas. بالأمس نحن قدرنا نستضيفه في صوت الشعب وأثار قضايا مهمة جدا أنا قاعد أفتكرها إنه نحن لازم نجيب فيه. الحلقة بتاع الليلة مبدئيا عندنا 4-5 متحدثين، ونفتح برضو فرص للناس لائقا، لكن السيستم بتاع النقاش بتاعتنا الليلة هتكون مختلف من كل الحلقات اللي نحن قاعدين نعملها. نحن ما هنجيب كل الناس دي في استديو، ممكن هسه أنا معي امباسادور ايمانويل موجود وانجينير دومينيك موجود، لسه بينضم لنا دكتور فرانسيس مالوال، وينضم لنا أستاذ فيليمون داود، وينضم لنا هونوربل ريس موج. And later on, if there is some people also, they need to join us or they need to come in, let me know. Then I will try to send them link in their messengers or their WhatsApp. This is what we're going to do until we open the link publicly. But now I have the 2 guests. Ambassador Emmnuel is here, and Engineer Dominic is here actually with me for before 30 minutes from now. I'm going to bring them up. They greet you. Then we are going to start. We'll start with Engineer Dominic because he was here before Ambassador Emmnuel. But let me bring them up. مرحبا بكم Engineer Dominic باش مولانا Emmnuel Ajawin. أنا بقول لكم good afternoon because it's actually afternoon over there. Let me start with Engineer Dominic. And then Dominic, I will mute myself. I want you to greet the audience. Then we'll go with the system. Then everybody will go down. Yeah, let me mute myself. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Edward. Let me say hi to you and to my brother Emmnuel Ajawin with me here in the studio. Not forgetting our esteemed viewers of the Voice of People Forum. I'm much honored and privileged to be here to critique some of the talks that was being delivered by one of our renowned South Sudanese son, a scholar of his own and a learned professor. Having said that, I know he has raised some very important issues that need us to critically look at it. And in so doing, we are going to open up a new dispensation for discourse among the people. call it a civil or intellectual discourse. To me, this is very important. And we are trying also to send signals, to the regime in Juba, that instead of shutting people's voices and putting them in the blue house, terrorizing them, using the machinery of the national security, let us open the space for a democratic discussions, so that together as people, we can be able to shape the political landscape of our country, and we can be able to raise the leaning shoulders of the nation. He has brought a number of issues that are so pertinent that we need to really come and sit and discuss about it, rather than just criticizing him for the sake of criticism. As people who have been in the research, who've been doing studies, we always give rooms for alternative views. As we are going to give our views on whatever he has said, we will also be giving alternative views to whatever has happened. So I'm very humbled that I'm here, and I wanted to greet the audience. And it is my humble view that we will have a fruitful discussion in this time that you will be spending with us and some of the colleagues that will be joining. So I thank you so very much for opening up this space. Thank you so very much.
Yeah, thank you, Engineer Dominic. Ambassador Emmnuel, the floor is yours.
Good morning, Bajmuhandis Edward. Also, good morning to my brother, Engineer Dominic, and good morning to your audience, or afternoon or evening, whatever time may be. I am really humbled to be in this show today and to critique the academical and intellectual propositions and the interview that our learned Professor Adwok Nyaba did with you yesterday, I think, if I'm not wrong. And it will be good to look at these critical issues and the ideas that he has put forth critically, because these are very important ideas, and we need to really give them the intellectual discussion that it deserves, the intellectual discourse. So I hope today we'll be able to do the service to the issues that he has raised. Thank you, Bajmuhandis.
Unmute yourself.
Yeah, before we start, let us try to agree on the time, the minutes everybody's supposed to have. So let me hear from Ambassador Emmnuel and Engineer Dominic. Let me hear from you. What are you proposing? Because will be standard, even the joining us, the joining guests, they will follow the same standard. So because we are going to take topic. First of all, we are going to start with the issue of adaptation of the federal system in the Republic of South Sudan. So then we'll come to the next one. So let us try agree, give a proposal of the minutes.
Yeah, I think. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, have you, Ambassador?
Yeah, I think we'll do what really good.
What do you say?
15 minutes. 15 minutes.
Dominic.
Yes, okay.
Yeah, let it be 10 minutes. They will let it be 10 minutes. 10 minutes will be good. I shall more mic boarding. Philiemon is here. Philiemon. Philiemon, welcome. Let me give you the chance also. You can greet the audience. Then before we start. Yeah.
Okay. First of all, the sound that
sound. Let me mute myself then.
Okay. I would like to take this opportunity to greet all of you, the host, Brother Edward, and also I would like to recognize my brothers here, Ambassador Emmnuel, Engineer Dominic. Also, I would like to take the opportunity to greet all the community of the Voice of the People. It is a great opportunity for me to be on your show, and it is good that we can, together with my brothers here, to make some analysis on the issues that put by Professor Nyaba yesterday, and it is a very important issues that we should look on it in a very political and also economical way of how we're going to discuss these issues, because it is the issues that put our country in this turmoil, and it is up to us to make sure that to agree with him or not to agree with him and putting the way forward, because it is very, very important for all of us as South Sudanese. So lastly, I'm so humbled to be here, and I'm glad that I see my brothers here. Thank you, and later on I will contribute more.
Messenger audio.
Sorry, I mute. Sorry. I was saying that let me thanks Philiemon for joining. Let me mute you, Philiemon. And the minute will be 10 minutes for now for each of you. Otherwise, we'll reverse it again later on. So everybody need to actually be concentrate on is 10 minutes. Let us, what I'm going to do, I will put everyone down. We'll start with Engineer Dominic, and we are going to talk about adaptation of the federal system في South Sudan اللي هو النقطة المهمة البروف يتكلم فوقه كمثلا هو كباك جراوند بتاع بروفيسور بيتر أدوك نيابا. في ناس كتير ما بيعرفوا بروفيسور. الباك جراوند بتاع بروفيسور بيتر أدوك نيابا هو كومونيست، هو شيوعي. سو الحاجة الناس لازم تعرفها، الناس المشاهدين بتاع الحلقة، انه كل الناس اللي انضموا للحركه الشعبيه في 83 كان لهم خلفيات سياسيه. النقطه ده مهم جدا للجنوبيين، لانه انا لاحظت the emotion or emotional spirit لدي عدد كبير جدا من الناس، والناس يفتكروا انه الانضمام بتاع الناس للحركه الشعبيه في 1983 معناه خلاص الناس ده كانت حركه، ما كانت حزب سياسي. الحركه الشعبيه اسمها موفمنت، وانضمت الناس دي بكل مكوناتهم السياسيه. بروفيسور أدوك هو لسه ملتزم بالمنطلقيات اللي انطلق منه الفكرية، ملتزم بمركزيته، ملتزم بالايديولوجية الحصل الرباو اللي تربى عليه اللي هو ايديولوجية الحزب الشيوعي والمركزية. لذلك معظم التفكير بتاعه طبعا كان بصب في المصلحة بتاعت التفكير بتاعه والمنطلق اللي هو بينطلق منه. من هذا المنطلق هنا نبدأ نتكلم عن القضية بتاعت فيدرالية. وفلور انجينير دومينيك will be yours. You have 10 minutes. Please go ahead.
My brother Edward, you reminded me of Professor Severino Logwek, my professor in English at the University of Juba. May his soul rest in peace. He said that if you don't stop a doctor or a professor, he will talk until thy kingdom come. So these issues of time is very important for us also to delimit ourselves. Having said that, let me begin up with what Professor Adwok Nyaba has said. And I'm not going to actually talk on federalism or the concept of federalism, because I know that is not what he has as an intention, or for us to tell about federalism to the people of South Sudan. But what I wanted to talk about is the issues that he has raised with regards, to the issue of federalism, as to why is, federalism not the best option to the people of South Sudan, or why is federalism not good as a system that will resolve all the problem. And I will depth with the reasons that he has raised, because to me that is very important, having listened to him so very carefully. And also the link between federalism, vis-a-vis Kokora, and why is that not going to solve the problems of the people? To me, this is very important. We all know very well that there is a historical context which he has talked about as to why the people of South Sudan decided to demand for a federal system. And because of all these reasons, why do we still think that federalism is the best module to bring all the people of South Sudan so that they can be able to govern this country, knowing very well that South Sudan is a complex, it's a socio-cultural complex entities. Adwok said that the reason that resulted into the people of South Sudan demanding federalism from the north is because there is marginalization. It's because South Sudanese felt that they are being excluded from the ruling of this country. They have been termed as second-class citizens. And as a result of that, people went to war and fought all these wars. We know the historical context that from 1947 via 1972 until to date, those demands were still so pertinent. And if you looked at the reasons as to why South Sudanese were demanding federalism there during the time on which we are in Sudan, and now I think the conditions are still there. They are still favorable. Because if you look into our contemporary South Sudan, there is marginalization. There is dominations of power at the exclusions of the other parameters of the societies of South Sudan. There is disparity in the provisions of the wealth in the country. There is a concentration of power in the center at the expenses of the peripheries. I think all these factors are still valid. And therefore, it warrants that the only way out of this is for people of South Sudan to come. And I agree with him, because federalism as a system of governance is not just something that is out of the blue. There is no one model of a federal system that best fits the nations of the world. So every country has its peculiarities when it comes to a system of governance. Even if when we are going to adopt a federal system of governance, I think we need to address it in our context as South Sudanese. What is it that is our commonalities? And therefore, going forward, we are supposed to sit down and agree and discuss. And that is why when I say I agree with him, because this element of people of South Sudan coming to sit and discuss and agree what is so best to us is what is lagging. And this is one thing that the SPLM as a government, as a forum, did not provide it from the time it went to the bush. I also agree with him, because when we went to fight the war, we went and fought the war because of isms, because of a number of factors. What the SPLM was supposed to do is to come down, sit and agree and discuss some of these factors by factoring it into their political program, so that it becomes an alternative of what we should adopt as a matter of fact. But this did not happen. And therefore, when people are talking of the SPLM as the only vehicle, some of us will now question the legitimacy of this party, because the party has failed. You know, the rhetoric was, let us go and fight the war, because fighting the war is one thing, and now implementing the program as to why you fought the war is another thing. And that is why barely 2 years after our independence, we went to war because the SPLM decided to fail to address some of these, peculiarities or problems. And that is the weaknesses of the leadership of the SPLM. And South Sudanese are also falling into the traps because, like I said, whatever we have called in the context of of Sudan then and there is still true in the context of South Sudan. So some of the slogans that we raised those days is still true in the context of South Sudan. So to come and say, well, we know we wrote these slogans during the time of Sudan and therefore it is not true to the case of South Sudan, it's also not right. And that is why we are missing, and that is why we have a problem. I agree with him that post-colonial problems or nation, it is so very difficult to reorganize them, especially when you lack leaders that have the psyche, the mental preparedness, the wisdom, and the knowledge and the ideas to steer this country to a prosperity. But if we were supposed to sit, having realized that we went for war because of all these isms, we would have sit as South Sudanese, including all the other parameters and the political forces of this country. So it is not difficult to come and sit. And that is why I said before that from 2005, in the state of the SPLM embarking on a strategic national program or development, they decided to come with the unknown mantra. So it is actually in this unknown mantra that they failed, because we were asking them, what do you know? They will say, I know. This thing is happening. They will say, I know. So we ask them, what do you know from what you don't know? And that has become, the tragedy. So unless we come and sit down, we will never be able to resolve these things. Now, one thing that I find it also so a little bit strange is that Adwok was saying that for federalism, and he gave the examples of America, that it was entities that came up, organizations, they come and agree over a federation. But again, one thing that he also missed was that these conditions are so favorable in South Sudan. South Sudan is nations. I know he's aware, because even the kingdom of Sholo, where he hails from, has been existing for the last 600 years, let alone this kingdom of Anua and the Azan, the kingdom, and they are the chieftaincy, the likes of the Pitia Luker. These guys were administrating themselves, the Ladu enclave. History was there to show to us that we were being lumped together. Now, one thing that we are supposed to understand is that in this reality, we are in the 21st century. Having known that federal system as a model of government has worked in other places.
19 seconds.
We were supposed to
19 seconds, actually. You almost finished.
Okay. We were supposed to agree that this model of the government is important to us, and we are supposed to sit as political processes, as communities, and adopt it without necessarily
Dominic,
resolving into isms that will
Dominic,
go and cause animosity so that people will fight. Because according to
Dominic.
he said that the people of Sudan or South Sudan.
Let me say this, Dominic Zaman bitaginta, lakin Gibel, yeah, أنا نزلت Dominic, yes. كلام في إيكو yes يا تريزا. الكلام الجبال مولانا إيمانويل قالوا أمباسر إيمانويل قالوا بتاعت 15 دقيقة. I'm going back to that 15 minutes, but it will not be throughout the topic. There is some topic they need us to go with 15 minutes. القضية بتاعت فترالي, I'm going to give Dominic another 5 minutes. Then Ambassador Emmnuel وداود Philiemon بياخدوا 15 دقيقة, because this issue is supposed to be 15 minutes. But let me try to remind Dominic and also Ambassador Emmnuel, he will be coming, I know you prepare very well, and also Philiemon. الكلام اللي قاله دكتور أدوك نيابا في نقطة مهم. أنا كنت بتمنى إنه أي زول من الناس اللي بيجوا من المتحدثين يحاول يتطرقوا له. وبرضه لو زول حاول يعمل ميكس كده انا I will not force anyone like Dominic but Ambassador Emmnuel I know and Philiemon also they will try to mix Arabic with English because we have audience listening Arabic and they are over South Sudan and those are our targets. So let us also put that in our mind, try to shift here and there. بروف اتكلم انه منافسه بتاعت الحركه الشعبيه لتحرير السودان في 83 لم يتطرق لقضيه بتاعت الفدراليه بقضيه بتاعت كوكرا، والنقطه دي مهم جدا. لم يتطرق لقضيه بتاعت تقسيم جنوب السودان الى 3 اقاليم. هسه الجزء من التشرذم الموجود في جنوب السودان هسه let us take it from that side. Let us be honest and try to find a solution to what's going on now في جنوب السودان. دي بروف قال المنافسه بتاع الحركه ما يتطرق للقضيه دي، ولادي يوم الليله في جنوب السودان قالوا ما في زول يتطرق للحكومه والحركه الشعبيه، حتى الاحزاب الثانيه موجوده في جنوب السودان ما في زول فيهم يتطرق انه يخاطب القضيه بتاعت الكوكرا اللي ادى للتقسيم بتاع جنوب السودان ل 83. People keep ignoring this. This is one point. النقطه الثانيه البروف يتكلم عنه بالمنظور بتاعت الفدراليه كمنظور علمي scientific view، انه مثلا ان هنا how we going to implement الفيدراليزم في جنوب السودان كانتيتيز، لانه عشان تطبق الفدراليه ما هي اصلا اتحاد ضعيف بين المركز والاقاليم ده فهم بتاع الفدراليه. انا برضو داير بعدين بس Emmnuel also on Philiemon because لسه عندكم زمانكم ما جاء how we going الاتحاد ده كلام البروف كان بيقوله and this thing بروف اشار انه الناس كتير ما they don't want to discuss this because people are talking empty talk. And في نقطة ده I do agree with Professor Adwok Nyaba. Let us be honest and face it with ourselves. How are we going to implement this? How are we going to do this? معناته لما تطبق الفدرالية لازم انت تكون بالمنظور علمي اللي انا بعرفه كيدوان اتحاد ضعيف ما بين الاقاليم مع الاتحاد في صلاحية السلطات بتكون ما موجود في المركز بتمشي للولايات. How are we going to implement this? Also we need to talk about it also. This is a point. النقطة الأخيرة أنا دايما ننبه به برضه المداخلين السوليوشن. لما أنا سألته في الحل هو بقول إنه يا جماعة السوليوشن is forming a national democratic movement. This is the solution to what's going on in the country. Let me go back and give 5 minutes to Dominic. Dominic, to be honest with you يا جماعة be remind زمن ما عندك لو ما عندك I will drop you down. 5 minutes 5 minutes 15 minutes 15 minutes. It's very clear, yeah. Yes. Go ahead, Bashmandis.
Go very quickly. Yeah, and that is what I was trying to say. And Prof decided to bring up these issues, which is so valid because he talks of a highly, centralized post-colonial state in Sudan, and that is the same case in South Sudan. We have a highly, centralized. Unless we do something with this, we are not going to see a way out of this thing, because then the problem will continue to be there, because some people are so very happy with the notions of the fact that everything is in the hands of the central, crippling the resources of the country. And that is why he said these things must be destroyed. However, I agree, because today people are talking of kokora. And we have defined what kokora is. But what people have failed to address is the issue of why did kokora happen? And if you look into 1972 going forward until it happened in 1983, were those conditions not indifferent from what is happening today? And that is why Prof cautions about the fact that shokol dabu kan infajir. Is a infajir because الحاجات دي لسه موجوده قاعده, and people are living in denial. الناس بيدفنوا رؤوسهم زي النعامه في الرمال, ودي الحاجه اللي هو كان قاعد يتكلم فوقه. We were supposed to look as to why Kokora came, and that is why he was saying, why do you went and fight? Okay, we went and fight because of these things. Number 3, what I wanted to say within the my time is that yes, we are supposed to sit down as people, the political forces of this country,
صعب انه هنا نعمل الكلام ده؟ ما صعب. So لما انت تجي تسال هنا الكلام ده بيعملوها كيف؟ We were supposed to sit down and agree that indeed as South Sudanese we الcondition ده متوفرة. We were a nation that were put together in this geographical context called South Sudan. And that is why I was saying it was not difficult. الأرضية دي متوفرة لنا في جنوب السودان. We just have to come in and agree and say, you know, this system, and be honest with ourselves. Because mushkila with our political forces of our country is that they are not honest about the realities of our country. So with the issue of federalism, I still insist that federalism is the best way of governing a cosmopolitan, you know, place like South Sudan. But what is so important is that we now have to come and sit therefore and agree as to what is this federalism. It should not be looked as if it is only one region, you know. And even these issues of this redivision, the redivision was actually, you know, asked by all the people of Sudan, of South Sudan, I mean. Yes, Nimeri decided to play his beaten part with the notions of the divide and rule, but again, South Sudanese has contributed, you know, to this kind of notions. For example, from 2005 to date, if we were supposed to agree and said we came out of a war and therefore we need to put all the infrastructure for a formidable government in place, whereby we respect, you know, the people's premises in this context. Can we not develop? We can develop. We can put a stable government. But because of what he has said, you know, we have a bunch of dimwits, people who doesn't have the nitty-gritties and the ABCDs of what it partakes to be a government. And that is why Pierre Lumumba said, people who have ideas don't have power, and people who have power don't have ideas. And Salva Kiir is one of them, you know. And so anything that he has, and by the way, it was the same, you know, government of the SPLM that is actually rejecting the notion of federalism, you know. So, because to them, federalism, you see, people were not asking about ethnical federalism. I don't want to go to these definitions of whether this is a devolution of power, you know, whether this is a fiscal and administrative federalism. This is not the issue. We wanted to look as a system. Is federalism the best system for South Sudan? Taking into consideration, I am aware that yes, you know, to equate federalism to separation is also as deadly, you know, as the rejection of federalism itself.
Your minute, yes. Thank you, Bash Mahandis Dominic. Sita the guy bitad inta. Dr. Francis, ana resetelega link, and ana resetelega tani is the same link ana resetele Ambassador Emmnuel, Dominic, or Philiemon, the same link. Go and use the same link, will bring you. David Biel, Ustaz David Biel أنا شايفك أنا رسلت لك لينك لكن شكلك مرات السودان ما قاعد أخش بعد مع المتحدثين بداية يتكلموا في موضوع بتاع الفدرالية. أنا بقوم بيتصل بك في ماسنجر عشان تستضيف صوت بتاعك في موضوع بتاع الفدرالية. لأن هنا هنمشي نسمع من أمباسادور إيمانويل أجاوين في موضوعنا ده نعمل له كليريفيكيشن. امبارح في صوت الناس وزعوه في ماسنجر. في صوت وزعوه في ماسنجر and I have the voice here. صوت إنه أدوك بروفيسور أدوك نيابا هو في 2010 من وكان في برلمان ومن ناس رفضوا إضافة فدرالية في دستور. الكلام ده ما صحيح. الزول ده قاعد يضلل زول من السواية قاعد يضلل في مواطنين. أنا شغلي أنا عرفت الزول لكن الصوت بتاعه سجله ده معلومات بتاعه كله غلط. النقطة الثانية برضو قاعد يقول إنه شلوك في على النيل شلوك هم أقلية لذلك شلوك ما دايرين فدرالية because of this they are minority وكده. That also is not correct and that is not true. شلوك في على النيل they are not minority my friend. So إنت الرأي بتاع أدوك ده رأي بتاعه كشخص زي الرأي بتاع إدوارد. It got nothing to do with شلوك. إدوارد نفسه قاعد يقول رأيه هنا ولا مثلا أي زول جاي هنا عندنا فيليمون رأي بتاع فيليمون as opinion. It got nothing to do with Maban and even with anyone في Maban. كذلك دكتور فرانسيس ملوال رأي بتاعه got nothing to do with دينكا. ده رأي بتاع فرانسيس and is responsible for his opinion. So الناس زي ديل الجنوبيين تحذروا منهم. Let me give floor to Ambassador Emmnuel. And welcome, Dr. Francis.
Shukran, Bajmahandis, and greetings again to our audience. The topic today is quite interesting, especially Uncle Adwok's, Professor Adwok's views on federalism. Adwok was looking at federalism from two angles. One, he was looking at it from the historical perspective. And the other angle of it also is looking at the current demand by the people of South Sudan on the issue of federalism. So خلينا شوي نتكلم عن النظرة التاريخية اللي كان بروفيسور أدوك بيتكلم فيه عن الفدرالية. نعم الفدرالية وطلب بتاع الفدرالية من قبل الأحزاب الجنوبية especially the Liberal Party في سنة 1950 ده كان مطلب شعبي وده كان مطلب أصيل ومطلب نبيل من قبل النخبة السياسية الجنوبية حينذاك ده قبل الاستقلال السودان. لأن الجنوبيين كان عندهم شعور بأنه مركزية السودان هي هتعبر عن الأوروبا، هتعبر عن الإسلام وما أدراك. ثانيا بما يختص بقسمة السلطة والثروة، الجنوبيين كانوا على يقين وكانوا مقتنعين بأنه المركز هيحمشهم، المركز الجلابي هيحمشهم. عشان كده أجدادنا طلايا بتاعهم قبل الاستقلال كان بيطالبوا بالفدرالية. الطلب في الفدرالية ليس كانت من الضعف or inferiority complex كما أدى بروفيسور أدوك، لكن كان نابع منه الجنوبيين كان ديرين حقوق، يعني كان ديرين إدارة بيختص بهم ممكن يديروا شؤون الدولة بتاعهم ولا المنطقة بتاعهم بعيدة من التسلط والهجمنة بتاع المثقفين بتاع شمال السودان. ده كان the historical background بتاع السنة بتاع الفدرالية هنا ذاك. لكن الفدرالية تطورت. الشعب الجنوبي الآن بينادي بالفدرالية مش عشان في ظلم من قبل الحركة الشعبية ولا في حكومة ديكتاتوري مستبد أجبر الجنوبيين بأنه ينادوا بالفدرالية. قد يكون في جزء من الحقيقة في الكلام ده، لكن ده ما هدف وراء الطلب من أغلبية الشعب الجنوبي بالفدرالية. الهدف من الفدرالية of course as many of you know there's a different federalism. It talks about the sharing of power and wealth between the centers and the free-frees. معناه شنو؟ معناه في الحكم الفدرالية هي المشاركة في السلطة والثروة بين المركز والولايات. ده الهدف من الفدرالية. Now, Uncle Adwok was trying to link federalism with the Kokora. These are two different things. Kokora is actually a devolution. It's a devolution of power, not even of wealth. So in a devolution system, it is a center. It is a prerogative of the center to accord certain privileges and certain rights to the counties or to whatever entity or unit of the governance that exists within that geographical space. That is devolution. Kokora was a devolution. Kokora is not federalism. Federalism is not Kokora. Those are two different things. When we talk about federalism, what do we mean? We're talking about the true sharing of wealth and power between the center and the states. And also this sharing, all the relationship between the states and the center is governed by the Constitution. So the Constitution does give the ample power to the states in terms of running their own political issues, their own political affairs, and also their own economical policies. You know, and there's some areas, of course, of concurrence where they will have to cooperate. For example, the issues of highways and the issues of infrastructure and so forth. But the real essence of federalism is the power sharing between the center and the states. Why do we demand federalism in the Republic of South Sudan? We are conscious that our country, we are almost 60-something plus tribes or nations. whatever you call it, whatever terminology you use. And in order to harmonize this diversity that you have in South Sudan, federalism will be a form of government or governance that will give the service, that will give the political power to these states so that they are able to utilize these powers, you know, be it economical, be it political, for the social development that is needed within a specific state. This is the essence of federalism. Now, Uncle Adwok talks that how do you implement federalism? And he said that federalism, you need to use force to implement federalism. I mean, the essence or the notion of using force to implement federalism, it is actually, when you look at federalism, when it emerges as a concept of governance at the infancy stages, for example, in the United States, where the 13 little colonies, you know, Confederate colonies, emerged and started forming a federal. That is in terms of the historical context. But federalism now in South Sudan, you don't need to destroy the center, you know, to implement federalism. There's already a political consensus across the political divide in our country, be it the government, be it us in the opposition, be it other opposition that are inside the country, that federalism is the best model of governance for the country. So there's no need to use of force, you know, to implement federalism, because even the government that is oppressing, a government that is dictatorial now in Juba, has accepted that federalism, you know, is a form of governance that could be the South Sudan could be governed with. So there's a consensus. What is the difference, or what is the point of divergence? The point of divergence lies in the interpretation of federalism and the wider powers that the federal states should enjoy. Something that you could have federalism mixed with devolution. South Sudan now, it is stated as a federal state, you know, in the constitution. But when you look and examine it closely, you will find that South Sudan is not truly federal. What you have is actually a devolution. So the centers still decides what to give or what not to give to the states. And this is not what we want, especially as in Soma. In Soma, we want a true federalism where there's absolute power and absolute wealth, control of wealth given to the states. You know, this is the federalism that we are talking about. So you don't need to force to implement federalism. There's already a political consensus. Of course, Professor Adwok is also influenced by his political orientation and political ideologies of the Communist Party. The Communist Party, of course, they believe in the centralization, you know, and Hukum al-Markaziyya, you know. But of course, everyone has his own political persuasion, and that is their own political rights. But what we are saying that South Sudan can be best governed by federal system, and many of us, especially as a National Democratic Movement, Patriotic Front, we have held a lot of series and lectures about why federalism is the best model for our country. Regarding the issue of manifesto, that the SPLM manifesto did not talk or did not resolve the issue of Kokora, I think that was not by accident, because as Professor Adwok stated, الحركة الشعبية في البداية كانت حركة مركزية. حركة شوية هدفها كان بأنه يبني السودان جديد على أسس جديدة هي عدالة والمساواة وكده. ف SPLM was built on a socialist orientation, and he knows very well that in most of the social or the leftist organization, many of them do not ascribe, especially the classic Marxists, do not ascribe to the notion of decentralization, but they argue for centralization of power. So SPLM at that time was not fighting for an independent South Sudan, for it to warrant to talk about the devolution or the Kokora. but it was really fighting for the whole Sudan and the new political dispensation. So it was not in its place, in my opinion, to start talking about Kokora at that time. Kokora was a devolution of powers, and hence the SPLM and those who drafted the manifesto did not see the necessity of drafting a manifesto and also addressing and tackling the issue of Kokora. They thought that what they need to do is to create this new Sudan vision and to rally the people of the whole Sudan behind the vision of New Sudan. That's why perhaps they did not really look at the issue of devolution of powers. So in a nutshell, the debate in South Sudan about federalism has gone beyond any disagreement. Majority of the political forces in the country, they have already accepted that federalism is the best governance, be it in the revitalized RCS, you have federalism in it. Perhaps, and also in Soma, we are demanding federalism. What is the point of divergence? As I say, it is actually what type of federalism do we want? You know, what kind of powers should the federal state should have? But as to the debate of South Sudan having federalism is a foregone conclusion. And hence, the question of using force to implement federalism does not arise here. Because if it would have only made sense if the government in Juba refused to accept the political notion of federalism, then you would have said that we need to use force to force the government to accept federalism. But the government has accepted that. So to me, we are crying over spilled milk, and there's no going back in South Sudan regarding federalism. Federalism will address the social, economic, and political ills that our country has been facing since the independence in 2011. What is needed is for us to discuss the details of federalism. Thank you, Baj Mahandis. I think I've done enough service on this topic of federalism.
Shukran jaziran, Ambassador Emmnuel. Very good. By the way, you remain with 3 minutes and 50 seconds. But actually, thank you for doing the good job. الحاجة الثانية اللي أنا أقدر أنبه به المتداخلين والمتحدثين زي ما قال قبل شوية السيد سفير إيمانويل، عندنا في نظامين، عندنا نظام الفدرالي وعندنا نظام الكونفدرالي confederation. So هنا في جنوب السودان ما قاعد نتكلم عن implementing confederation اللي هو اتحاد ضعيف بين الدويلات، يعني دويلات ضعيفة. نحن قاعد نتكلم عن تطبيق بتاع الفدرالية في جنوب السودان كنظام بتاع حكم، وفي نماذج بتاع الدول النظام بتاع الفدرالية نجحت فيها. Let us go and listen to Ustaz Philiemon Daud. Philiemon, welcome, and you have 15 minutes.
Thank you, Brother Edward, once again, and I also thank all the viewers of the Voice of the People. As I made it on the introductions, today is very important for us to look at the opinions that put it out by Professor Nyaba on the federalism. Federalism is the system that demanded by the people. And when we look at the Professor Nyaba ideas, he was looking on the side of, the culture and side of, grievances, why people demanded this federalism system. And I want to look at the key point that he mentioned on his speech. One of the things that he mentioned, he said it very clearly that federalism is demanded by the section of society in which they feel marginalized and politically excluded. And that is where his disagreement come upon. Federalism is, is the system that we all want to happen. But we have to look at the reason why people, demanded the federalism system. And he made it very clearly here on the section of society. And that is where I disagree with him on that point. Because when you look at South Sudan, the system that we have now, you can see the marginalizations of the people. And when the people marginalize, then you can, it will stir up the anger and the frustrations, and people demand to live alone. And that is what, we see in South Sudan, because the exclusions and political discrimination that established by the system that we have now. And you also mentioned about the section of society. I think it's not only Equatorians demanding the federalism. It is the demand of the people. And if you look at if you look at all the political forces, for instance, the IO, which Oda mentions, IO was talking about that because people demanded that for, power need to be distributed into the local level, and all the people has to start developing their own system in the, the places in the local government and in the state, and then it will come to the center. But if you look at the system that we have now, as he mentions, all the powers is concentrated on the center, and the services that we have is not going to the people, because you can see only one man is deciding over all the system of governance in our country. And that is why, Nyaba is doubt on that. And I agree with him on that, because if we want to establish a federal system, then first we need to look at the society that we have in South Sudan. So if you look at, our society is based on the group setting. And if we implement the federal system, it is going to be very challenging, because people tend to live in a group, and also look at the issues of tribalism within our society. And people might think that if I, demand for federalism, then it is going to be like, a tribalism or tribal democracy or tribal federalism that we are looking. And that is, is doubt comes from. And you also look at the historical background that some of the people mentions. So if we look at Sudan, when the SPLM started the war with the ideas of New Sudan, a secular Sudan, a Sudan that, reflect and services has to go to all the people. And that is why Dr. Odo, his argument based on that perspective. But, you mentioned something about Kokra. Kokra, like you said it before. Kokra, I disagree a little bit with my brother Emmnuel. Kokra is not the devolution of powers. Kokra comes as a result, in my own view, is about, it looks like a decentralization. People demand everybody has to go in his own place. Then you can start building your own system in your own state, your own local government, and then you can bring it up, and then all of us, we can have an agreement what kind of federalism that we want, which Nyaba mentioned about the union of the people. And the union of people comes with the conditions. He mentioned about the conditions. And that is the perception that, we should be looking on the areas of Kokra. Because if you concentrated all the powers in the center, then the other group will feel marginalized, politically disconnected, and also they feel marginalized in the, wealth sharing, which is the equitable distribution of the wealth. As we see now, people are suffering because of the centralization government. And that is the problem I see. So we don't have to demand federalism based on the anger, like what Kokora was, originally associated. But the demand that people are looking is based on the, the way the government is running the country now. And I believe, I believe I agree with, Professor Nyaba when he said that federalism should be based on the three regions. And that is you know, the way we should be considering how we can establish the federal system, unity of the people. And also, you know, the question is how we're going to do it, and that is what we all the region will agree. If we able to establish our local government and establish of you know, state government, then we can be able to make sure that our union will be based on the objectives, not just simply I'm coming to make a federalism system. It comes with the objectives. What do we want as South Sudanese? What kind of, you know, institution that we want to establish to, you know, to supervise the state government, and also the you know, to take power to the local government. I think that should be the way we are looking on the federalism. But if the federalism, we can take it in the basis of anger and basis of, you know, the way you want to live alone, I think you also mentioned that it can cause us war. And that war we cannot be able to, you know, to solve, because when we divided, you know, the country in the federalism system, that people might think that, okay, I'm taking my place or my state, then I don't want other people to come to my state, like the way we are seeing now. And that is, you know, the way Nyaba, I think, disagree with the establishment of the federalism system. And the other thing also you mentioned about, to establish the system of federalism, you need to destroy the center. I completely disagree with him. You know why I disagree with him on that statement? You cannot to destroy the center in the time that we have, or in the culture that we have in South Sudan, or the way groups have been associating themselves in South Sudan. I think it's not going to be easy for us to have a stable federal system, because the moment you destroy the center, that what will happen is, you know, people will go back to their own grouping, and then every tribe will, you know, come up with a way to challenge the center also again. If you establish the federal system based on the power, that you can destroy it. But what we are looking that the first thing, like you mentioned, we have to make sure that there is a peace in the country. We have to make sure that there is institutions established in the country. And then, you know, federalism comes based on the agreement with the people. And in that way, we can be able to, you know, distribute power in the way that, you know, people will be comfortable. But if we destroy the center, like he said, it is going to be very difficult for us to establish a stable federalism system. And that is the problem. I disagree, because there is two ways that you can destroy if we can go with the ideas of destroying the center. Either you can go through the military and then destroy the center, and then establish a government that you want, the system that you want, reflect based on the people. But if we do it based on the militarily, then it is going to be a lot of challenges within us, within the federalism that we want to establish. And that is the problems, you know. The other thing also I want to add it here is, you know, Nyaba mentioned something that I might not quite agree with him. He said that the struggle for separatists or suppressions comes as a result of being afraid or being weak, you know. So he thought that people that looking for or demanding for federalism or separation, like, you know, the way our brothers in Equatoria are demanding now, they deem to be weak. And that is not true, you know. When you have the oppressive system, the system that marginalizes people, the system that will not distribute, you know, wealth based on the, you know, the way reflect to all the people, then people will rebel. And that is what I see when people demanded the federalism. They are not weak, but they see there is a problem with the system that we have now in South Sudan. So there is a system that marginalizes them, exclude them politically or economically, you know. And that is why people begin to say, okay, if the government is not representing me, why I want to be a part of that system. And that is, the idea that brought people demanding to have their own government, have their own states, have their own local government, which is good, that, I agree with that. But to say that they are so weak, I think that statement is not true, but it is his own opinions. Weakness is not, it is anger. To me, I see federal system. People demanded that federal system because people are angry. They want the system that represent them. They want the system that, reflect on their needs. They want the system that unify the country. But it is not happening in our situation in South Sudan. Therefore, people have the right to say that, I want to have my own state, and then I can develop my own system. So another thing also I want to look here is, you mentioned about, the federalism that should be based on the region. I agree with him on that. In our case in South Sudan now, there are certain regions that controlling the wealth of the country now. But if we, tend to build, for instance, the Upper Nile, we in Upper Nile, we need to build our own system that work for the people of Upper Nile. And then we can come up with the laws in our own state, and then we can join, the union of the federalism in the center. And that is, in that way, you cannot feel marginalized, you cannot feel, because you have all your own system. In that way, we can have a very, system that can reflect to all the people. But one thing I thought that Nyaba should mention is, so if you look back, in case of South Sudan, we should have a concessional democracy. I'm saying this because it works in the country that living in ethnical and religious divide, like Netherlands, Switzerland, and then also Belgium. So if we have that system, I think it will help us to focus on all our tribes should be, represented. And when all our groups are represented, then we can be able to make sure that, all the groups have voices while we are developing our own system, and system that can reflect to people. Rather than that, I think, the system of federalism might be, very challenging for us in South Sudan.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, my brother Philiemon, for your time. Now we are giving floor to Dr. Francis. Just another نعمل remind للمشاهدين إننا لسه 5 قضايا علينا نناقشها. 5 قضايا مهمة جدا ومستنيين نستمر بنفس المنوال. دكتور فرانسيس أنديك 16 minutes 16 دقيقة. الدقيقة الواحد إنه to greet the audience with that minute, and the rest is yours. You are highly welcome, brother. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much, Brother Edward, for this great opportunity, and Happy New Year for everybody who tune in today. I'm very pleased to be here today, and although actually Professor Adwok is, I could say that is international figures, but the issue that he raised is a concern for everybody in South Sudan. So basically, the previous speakers, they dwell well about the federalisms and the obstacles that are facing the implementation of the federalisms. And I do agree with Professor Adwok in his fear about the federalism and the obstacles that are facing the federalisms. Because in South Sudan, if we go back, for example, we haven't evaluated the current problem that we have so that we can come up with the solutions. I've seen that all the political parties in South Sudan, they opted to the federalism as the solution for the current problem. But there is something that most of those political parties, they've been missing out, including Professor Adwok also. The issue is not the issue that the obstacle that are facing the federalism only. Is everything that we want to do in South Sudan that is not going. And we were not honest enough to ask ourselves why anything that we want to do, it doesn't work. Nobody asked that question. Even within the SPLM, they didn't ask themselves why actually they failed to translate their vision into actions, why they failed to provide the equality and the justice and to achieve prosperity. They didn't ask themselves because they assume that they are right and the system which is the problems. But that is not true, because there is no bad system and a good system of governance. If you talk about the federal system is good in some other countries, but for us in South Sudan, it may not work. Why? Because that is not the problem, the system of the governance in South Sudan, in my view. If you look to the central system of governance in other countries, you see it is working well, but it may not work in South Sudan. Why? Because that is not the problem. The problem that we have in South Sudan is not about the system of governance. There is no bad system of governance, whether it is a federal system is good, whether it is a central government is good. But the problem, all these systems doesn't work alone. They need leaders. They need leadership. So if you have a good system, like the central government, which is good, well, but you have a bad leadership, you will not be able to translate the system that you think it is good into actions. And that's exactly what we are facing in South Sudan. Let us say today you have a car. A driver doesn't know how to drive a car. So what would you do? You change the car, you take him from Toyota, you go and put the same driver on Mercedes, for example. Do you think this person who doesn't know how to drive the car will drive Mercedes? It will not work that way, because actually this person whom we have at the driving seat, he doesn't know how to drive the car. So the problem is not the car or the brand of the car that you are using. The problem is the driver. So if you want to fix the problem that we have right now, you teach this person to drive well. When he drive, he can drive Toyota, he can drive any brand of car. So basically, that is the argument that we should be focusing in, because South Sudan, we have not tried many people. How many people that we have tried as a leadership in the position of the leadership? We had only Kir. Is the Kir the standard person that we could say, okay, this system doesn't work because Kir actually tried and it didn't work, so the system is bad? No, of course, because we haven't tried many people. Maybe there is a good leader that will come and sit in this car and drive it well because he's a good driver. But the notion that we don't want to accept in South Sudan is that we don't want to tell the truth that we have a bad leadership. And all those sort of political parties who are calling for federalism is not because that they need this the service going to go to the people. I doubt that one, because we have tried. We entrusted the SPLM. They were fighting for the good for 21 years, for the nice objective, the novel objective, against marginalizations, against injustice and inequality, and they will come and we take it for granted that when we become an independent state, these SPLM, the people who fought for 21 years, they will come and do the right things. And look what happened. No right thing that has happened. Instead, when they came to power, they disregard all these noble principles. They went back and used the blue book of the same colonizer or the same oppressor that we've been fighting for. And that's exactly what is likely going to happen. Because why? Because these people, they feel entitled. South Sudan is not, for example, right now, when you look into Kir, for example, does he look like South Sudan? He is the president of South Sudan. and South Sudan actually belong to the people. No. The SPLM mentality, they think that because they fought for 20 years and they are entitled to do anything in South Sudan without anybody questioning them and without anybody objecting to what they do, because they feel that they fought for it. And that's why they have going to stay there, squander the resources without anybody. They have going to marginalize anybody that they want. And that is the same thing that the new guys who are now preaching that the federal system, yeah, we are fighting for you, people of South Sudan, and when we come, we will do the right thing. But don't make mistakes. If we allow these people again to utilize and we trust them the way that we trust the SPLM, the same thing that will happen, because when we move later on to the federal system and they get into the power, they will come and implement the same blueprint of Key right now. And that's why I agree with Professor Adwok with regard to calling for national democratic revolution, where all the people of South Sudan, they have to participate on it, and nobody should liberate anybody else. You need to come on board so that nobody would say that, oh, I fought this one and that is my cake. So that nobody could come and tell me al-fulu fuli zaratawa wahdi wa sa'akulu wahdi, like the way that the SPLM party is doing right now. Because if we want to be a speculator, we just watch the people, the majority of the people of South Sudan. You don't need to watch. We need to engage. Everybody needs to engage. If you think that it is a problem of Edward, it is a problem of Francis, it is a problem of Emmnuel Ajawin, so that Emmanuel, Francis, and whoever is out there will fought for your right, nobody, even me myself, don't trust me. Because you see, the power has spoiled so many revolutionaries. You have seen it, for example, when you go like Zimbabwe, what happened? Mugabe make it as his own property, stay there for almost 30-something years. If you go to Uganda, which is the movement of the people also, Museveni turned it to be his own because he's entitled that he fought for the people of Uganda, and he has the right to stay in power for life. And there are so many examples. It's only few revolutionaries that have made change. Maybe the Chinese, because they have principle. So the problem that we have in South Sudan is not a problem of system of governance. It is a problem of leadership. So we need to address the problem of leadership. Okay? If we don't address the problem of leadership, even if we introduce federalism, it will not work. And that is the worry that we have. The second thing is what? You see, the government, why the federal system will not work? Because the government feel he has everything in his hand. And if giving away power to the state, he look at this as a loss. Okay, he look at this as a loss because he feel that his own things. Imagine right now you go and work you go to the job, you paid $1,000 per week, and some people, they come in your house, they want to come and share with you what you have done, because that is what is the mentality of those SPLM party. This is the mentality of the president. When you see, even when there is a crisis in like, for example, when a thunderstorm hit a will, the spokesperson came out and say, we thank the generosity of His Excellency the President because he donated, I don't know how many million to the people in a will. As this money is scare money. It's not money for the people. That is the way they look at it. So these people are going to give power away to the state. They will not do it. Emmanuel says that the government accepted. Yeah, the government will accept that one because that is a tactic that the government use, or every dictatorship in any country, what they do, if they cannot defeat you military, what they do, they try to use the peace agreement, give you what you need, but they know that you will not be able to translate this one into action. And that's why actually the federal system, I can give it to you in agreement in Rome, but when you come inside, the implementation, zero. What happened to IO right now? Why there is the peace agreement is not being implemented? It's because that is the tactic. When you bring them in and you come and give them money, divide them, everybody is looking for money within those oppositions. So you will be able to buy them and destroy the movement. The government is the National Congress Party fought the SPLM, and when they came to power, they thought that they would be able to eliminate the SPLM and SPLA. They didn't do it military, but how they succeed? They say, okay, we fought, we lost a lot of our youth, and now we cannot do it by war. So what we do is we go to plan B. What was the plan B? Signed agreement. Signed agreement, give them independence. They gone. Right now, the SPLM is destroyed completely through peaceful means, because even right now, the SPLM that is in South Sudan is implementing the blueprint of the NCP. And this is how the NCP actually destroyed the SPLM. And now the NCP is there. Who is running the government of South Sudan is the NCP elements. What they are doing, they're using the same tactic to lure the opposition to come inside, sign the peace agreement that will not be implemented, and then destroy them within. And that's all. You remain in power forever. So that is one thing. The second thing also that he talked about is the issue of our part as a people. And this one, I raised it in 2019, I think, with Edward in the same show. We say that the peace agreement is signed, and we have the government, and we have the IO. And then these people, they will not be able to implement the peace agreement if there is no threat on them. And where we will get that threat, and that's why the role of all the people of South Sudan come in. We were saying that we should have an alliance, a peaceful alliance, that is a watchdog for the peace agreement to be implemented. Because if the IO and the IG and other political parties who are signatory to the peace agreement, if they don't want to implement the peace agreement, they know that the people who are united, they will drive them away from power, and that will give them the incentive to implement the peace agreement. But since we don't have that coalitions that rallied the majority of the people of South Sudan who have been left from this peace agreement, then they will not have any incentive to implement the peace agreement. This is one thing. And this has come to the elections, because Professor Adwok actually suggests that the time is not enough. So he thinks that the government should be given 10 years more as an interim period so that they can implement the peace agreement. But what will give the government the incentive to implement the peace agreement if there is no threat to them? Okay, nothing. Even the IO could be comfortable with the current situation as long as Riek Machar remain, as long as President Kiir remain and accepting Riek Machar to be the vice president, and the five president remain in power. So the other political party, they know if they go for election, they may not get the same seat that they are in right now. So they could every time extend the tenure and the interim period. And that is why it is important for the people of South Sudan to unite and change the dynamic of power. Because right now we are trying to unite ourselves, but the government is working in our court, dividing us. So we are in defensive positions. So if we need to remove from this one, we need to study the government. What are the weaknesses of the government? What are the strength of the government? And we try to divide ourselves. Some people working within our community trying to unite ourselves, and other people try to disintegrate the government weakness, so that when the government feel that is being threatened, he will draw his forces that is using to divide the people and go back and defend himself. And this is the same tactic that Dr. Jongarang used while we were fighting Jalaba within South Sudan. He said, no, we should open Western front, we open the Nuba Mountain front, we open the Eastern front. So Jalaba, instead of sending people to South Sudan to fight, he returned back.
Malish, Francis, your minute is over. Sorry, Doctor. Ana zai mana gutu gibel, we are not going to allow any more minutes. 15 minutes actually Katir. The last person is going to talk with the 15 minutes, 16 minutes. 1 minute is actually for greeting the audience. Is Honorable Res Moitang. And then we will go back to 7 minutes because in the Nasita we have 6, still we have 5 points, and we have to go through them all today. So أنا بعد Honorable Res أنا نرجع ورا ل7 دقائق فقط. الحاجة الثانية أنا داير نأكده للناس المشاهدين before Honorable Res coming. كان مهم جدا إنه ما في زول يتطرق عليه من المتحدثين، لكن later on we'll go back to it. اللي هو ما هي المخاوف من التطبيق بتاع الفيدرالية. يعني الناس اللي اتكلموا قبل I hope Honorable Res, I know always you don't take much time and you go direct to what you want to say. I know maybe you will touch, but later on أنا بتمنى من الناس المتحدثين before we finish the show, when we finish actually the remaining 5 points, we'll come back and talk about what is يعني ليه مثلا المخاوف من الفيدرالية شنو في جنوب السودان، ليه الناس قاعدة تخاف من التطبيق بتاع الفيدرالية. الحاجة الثانية السؤال الثاني داير نطرحه برضو أنا هنا because we don't want to confuse ourselves the people of South Sudan, and also this kind of discussion is good. إذا كان الجنوبيين الحزب الليبرالي أو حزب الجنوب في 53 جنوبيين كان بيطالبوا بالفيدرالية كنظام بتاع الحكم في جنوب السودان. الليلة المخاوف بتاع التطبيق بتاع الفيدرالية شنو؟ أنا بالنسبة لي لو فعلا هنا الجنوبيين دايرين تنمية ودايرين التوزيع بتاع السلطة ودايرين مشاركة بتاع السلطات في جنوب السودان، يا جماعة فيدرالية ما في سبب الناس ممكن تتخوف من التطبيق بتاع الفيدرالية. otherwise الجنوبيين ما دايرين تنمية، ما دايرين development، دايرين الباور to be concentrated في سنتر زي الحرامية اللي قاعدين في جوبا هسه، ويستمروا ياكلوا في بلد، ويستمروا يعني يعجلوا في القبلية، ويستمروا في انه القروش ده في ايادي بتاعت ناس معينين. لذلك فيدرالية لازم تطبق في جنوب السودان لضرورة انه يتم تغليظ السلطات والصلاحيات بتاعت السلطات الاتحادية. قروش كله هسه جنوب هسه الفقير قاعد يحكموا بالديجريز. Do we really South Sudan? We need to answer that question. Do we really need a country which is actually can be run by the degrees from the president? For me, Edward, hell no. Hell no. نحن ما دايرين دولة بيديروا بديجريز، دايرين الدولة بتدار زي ما قاعد تدار بالسياسات بتجي من كل المستويات، بتجي من تحت، يعني مش السياسات بتمشي من الفوق وتمشي لتحت. نحن دايرين نظام بتاع الحرمي، التصاعد من التحت بيمشي لفوق وتكتمل الحرم. ده اللي هنا دايرينه في جنوب السودان، ودايرين الفقر الموجود هسه في جنوب السودان مع الوضع بتاع النظام ما معروف شنو هسه ده، ما معروف رئاسي، ما معروف برلماني، ما معروف شنو. جنوب السودان ما بيتطور ولا بيتقدم. لذلك انا كإدوارد وانا داير مشاهدين الناس المتحدثين قبل ما نختم الحلقه we need to come back. انا بالنسبه لي ما في مخاوف من الفيدراليه. الفيدراليه كنظام بتاع الحكم ده نظام صحيح، نظام اسلم، لكن لانه التقبه من المثقفين ومن الحراميه ومن اللصوص اللي قعدوا في السلطه من 2010 ليوم الليله مستفيدين من القروش، عشان كده ما دايرين القروش يمشي للولايات، ودايرين الناس يجوا جوبا يكونوا شاعدين. This is what this government want and this must stop. Let me give the floor to Honorable Res. You have Honorable welcome, and you have 16 minutes. 1 minute will be for the greeting the audience, and the 15 minutes is yours. Please welcome.
Thank you, Edward. I greet all the audience. Happy New Year to all of you. It's been a long time, actually. I'm not actually going to take a long time. I will be very brief. I was open on. I never heard you exactly. It's like you say the 5 points are going to be discussed separately, which means that we are just going to talk about what is wrong with the federal system of the government. And yeah, I list all the points that were discussed by Dr. Adwok yesterday, and they were all very important points. And I think a lot of mistake has been made based on the the previous speakers that I have heard talking about what Adwok say. I think it's very important that we have to get out from the circle of Dr. Adwok Nyaba was not making a statement. He was actually analyzing the situation. And he thought what could be done and why it should not be done based on what he thinks the reality on the ground. And I think he approached it in a very expertise corner, which is experience and based on his academic background and his experience even in the government. If I go back to what he said, actually, Dr. Adwok did not disagree with the idea of the system of the government, like the federal system. He did not agree. He did not disagree with it, but he threw out doubt of how he think why the federal system doesn't look good at the moment based on the situation on the ground. And that is why he gave an example of the 50s when South Sudanese were actually complaining about the domination of the Northern Sudanese, and they thought that the idea of the federal system would be a good way out from all the problems that they were facing. And Dr. Adwok also clarified it. He said the problem was the idea of the federal system when the South Sudanese came together and thought about a way out from how they get out from the domination of the Northern Sudanese done, were to create a system of governance whereby they could be self-governant, whereby they have been in South Sudan, whereby the power should be divided. There will be, of course, some powers in the center, but they will still have some power that will enable them to be able to run their affairs in South Sudan. He did say that it did not come out of ideology. It came out of fear. It came out of frustration. It came out of problem that people are facing. You know, if you are drowning in the water, you can grab anything that you find on the surface of the water. Even people, you can pull them down with you. That doesn't mean that you're doing the right thing, but you're trying to save your life. In my own personal opinion, I 100% agree with Dr. Adwok Nyaba. I know a lot of people are trying to glorify some of the things that were said because it has something to do with them. Because when you talk about the Kokora, for example, most of the people from Equatoria would say, Kokora is a good system and all this. And I think they came out of, because it was said by Equatoria and they want to make it look good even though it was not good. It was not good because the result that the Kokora gave us was devastating. And that shows you the original idea of where people came up with the idea of Kokora, because the Kokora was that the Equatorian themselves feel they were marginalized, which is the truth. The people who were there, mostly dominant, were Dinka and the Nuer and the Upper Nile people, okay? And the people who were the owner of the place, those who were from Equatoria, felt that there is something wrong. And in fact, there was something wrong. And because there was something wrong, that they thought they need to get out of it, so they create something. The Kokora was not good from the beginning because it came out of frustration, it came out of problem, and it caused problem. And at the end of it, and at the end of the Kokora, you would see that it did not give us good thing. It went into chaos, it went into problem, and it is something that we cannot even talk about and compare it like a political ideology, because it is not a political ideology. It is wrong, it is bad, it gave us the wrong result, so that we have to create another thing. So going back to the idea of Adwok Nyaba, Adwok was actually analyzing the situation. He analyzed the situation, he put it on the table, and he tell you this is what could be done. The federal system right now, going back to some of the good points that were raised by some of the people, it's not about the people who need it. That is also an important part of the person that is implementing the policy of the federal system, which is the government. We know in the world now we have so many types of government. We have republic government, we have democracy government, we have totalitarian, we have dictatorship. South Sudan is not even part of all this system. It is not there. There is no system in South Sudan. The only system that you would describe as fit to South Sudan is anarchy, where there is no law, it's a lawlessness country, where system is being run, there is so much disorder in the country. Because if the people who create law are the ones who are potential lawbreakers, where can you have a system in the country? And that is why Adwok talk about, ideology. Ideology is very important. In South Sudan, the reason why we have problem today, and because our ignorance is so thick to the point that we cannot even admit that we have gone wrong. Even if we go 90, 100, 180 degree, wrong into what we are doing, we can't even correct ourselves and come back, because our pride is so sick and our ignorance is dominating our ideas. There is no ideology in South Sudan, and that is why we have disorder. And that is why I don't fear that if there are no people who sit down and create an ideology that lead to the system of the government, of the governance in the country, even if you do it, it will not make sense. It will create problem, because there were no people sat behind the door and decided what kind of system do we need in South Sudan. In any nation, all nations are built based on ideology. And ideology comes from philosophy of certain people. The philosophy that is ruling South Sudan is a philosophy of tribal elite. By the way, the idea that, and I am happy yesterday, I don't know what happened, whether Aldo Ajo comment on the show, because it seemed that Adwok was actually directly responding to Aldo Ajo. That he told him that the problem of the Young Council of Elders is because you organize yourself as a tribal entity that has influence on the government. By the way, I want to take us back. There is no ideology in South Sudan that think about, let's build a country whereby we put the system of the government, a country where we set a foundation for the next generation. When they come, they will pick it up from there. There is an ideology of, I need to dominate this country. My own tribal group need to dominate this country. And by the way, the Young Council of Elders that was formed in 2013 was not just a new idea. It was a whole idea, but it was not manifested. It just came on the surface in 2013. This is what actually had us in the 21 years when we were fighting during the liberation movement. There were people who were pregnant with that idea of domination, that we want to be the dominant in this country. The Nuer, we want to be number one in this country, we want to dominate it, and that idea has been ruling what we have been doing in South Sudan. And it does not allow the idea of building a nation, because building a nation, you have to look over to all corners of the nation, and you have to sit down how you rule that nation. And the national situation, the national environment of that nation will actually guide you on what to do. Even the law that you are going to create in this country will be influenced by the environment of the people, environment of all the people, are incorporating all the culture of the country from different part of ethnic group and all this kind of thing. You have to sit down. Nobody sat down until now. No two people sat down in South Sudan when South Sudan was formed to say that how are we going to run this country. Until that happened, until then we will have a nation. But as we speak now, even all of us are just pretending. All of us, when we get out from this Facebook show where we try to be telling people that we are the good people, we'll go back to our tribal grouping. That is a reality. Okay? So the fear of Adwok Nyaba, Adwok did not have an opposing opinion about the federal system. He knows it. He knows it better than anyone who is speaking here. He knows what the federal system means. Our problem is that anything that we are asking out of frustration, out of hunger, and out of all these things that we are paid will not help us. You have to create an idea. Kokora was not a good idea. It didn't work. It killed us. But Kokora came out of frustration, came out of reality that was happening. People were marginalized, like what is happening now in Juba. People land are being taken, and people are reacting into that. People are being disturbed by cow and the head of cattle and all this kind of thing. They were so mad, and now because they are mad, they are running after the people who are destroying their thing, and they think that what caused them run after these people can be made a system of government. No, it cannot be made a system of government, and it cannot be made by the people who are running after some people cow who destroy their property and all this. It can be made by people who are sitting down trying to rule this country. And that country will be ruled by the law that govern the country, govern all people. And this is where the nation will come. And also Adwok talk about the lack of the political organization. Like he talk about Juba University. I know when I was in Juba University in Khartoum, I know how political party were organized. And this is where we got part of our training about the political system. But now it's not happening in South Sudan. We have all tribal line. People are following, even the student at the university, even in the high school. In Sudan, then high school were being taught politics. But I don't know if this is happening now in South Sudan. So all in all, Adwok was talking about, because we're analyzing what he said yesterday. Adwok actually was expressing fear of there are no group of people ready to take this country forward, to lay up a foundation that can govern people. You cannot build a federal system out of frustration, out of hunger, out of being mistreated and all this kind of thing. It doesn't work that way. System of governance is system that is made by people who are well aware of the outcome of what the system will come. So to me, I agree with him. Not that I don't love the system of governance, which is the federal system, which I know is a devolution of the powers to the state, and you will have, more power. Like for example, in South Sudan, you have the constitution, like it was said. In the state, you have the National Legislative Assembly in the state. But did they work? They didn't work, because we were just put into confusion, because the ideology is wrong. The ideology that is running South Sudan now, we are still fighting of domination. Some people are fighting, they want to dominate this country. If we are really true patriot, we will come and ban people like Aldo Ajo to even still talking about the affair of this nation. Because their idea of domination, what make them create the Young Council of Elders, have not gone away. They just now find everything, the wind is clear, the situation seems to be calm down. They want to come back again and also implement what they did not implement. They have not taken the hand away from the national king. So there are so many points, but I think Edward told us to focus only on one point, because we are going to talk about the other point later. I think I have to stop here, and I wait for another time to
mute. Shukran jaziran. Thank you so much, Honorable Res. Thank you for the contribution. Let me say this. في كلام قالوا Honorable Res قبل شوية. He was actually, let me just, I put it down as he said. He was saying Dr. Adwok Nyaba exactly. He knows what you're talking about better than anyone is speaking here, and that is true. Nobody will deny that. Will say, even those are writing down there, we are better than Professor Adwok. النقطة الثانية المهم أنا داير I need to mention it before we go to the next point. Honorable Res put it correctly. لو انتوا لاحظتوا في الانترفيو بتاع دكتور أدوك نيابا كلهم وكان بيتكلم منه زول قلبه محموم على الوطن وقاعد يعني زي ما قال رس هو قاعد يشير مخاوف the fear from the situation والمستقبل بتاع الدولة بتاع جنوب السودان. وده خلانا انه نحن ذاتنا يعني بصراحة الكلام ترى الدكتور أدوك عنده تأثير هيكون عنده تأثير في القراءة السياسية للمستقبل بتاع جنوب السودان. and I can see now كل الناس opposition الناس المعارضات القاعدين في البوديوم هي اللي كانوا معنا من قبيلته كان بيشوف من خلال النقاشات بتاع الناس لأنه بروف يتحدث بكل شجاعة عن قضايا الناس ما قادر يتكلم عنها وناس قاعد يتكلم عن مصالح الشخصية للأفراد زي ما قال ريس قبل. كل زول هسه الناس ما قادر يتكلموا سياسة وما قادر يناقشوا أفكار ليه لأنه كل زول قاعد يناقش مصلحته. We are going to talk about that في the last point. نقطة بعدين هو شغل بتاع الأحزاب السياسية. The second point we are going to discuss now, just I need to remind, we are going back to 7 minutes. هنحن هنمشي ل 7 minutes because of time. بروفيسور أدوك نيابا هو يتكلم عن الانتخابات election والانتخابات وفق الاتفاقية بتاع السلام. الانتخابات هيكون بعد سنة تقريبا لأنه early of 2022 يعني مع بدايات بتاعت 2000 و 2022. السؤال اللي بتطرح نفسها هل مثلا جنوب السودان الآن كان South Sudan have a free and fair election under the RT Kono؟ هل مثلا حكومة بتاعت المسألة الدولة بتاعت جنوب السودان يعني هنا ممكن تقيم انتخابات نزيهة تحت الحكومة الانتقالية الموجودة الآن؟ This is the question. We need to discuss this. هو طبعا قال رأي بتاعه إنه إن هسه الجنوب ما جاهز للانتخابات. suppose الانتخابات يفترض يأجلوا. يعني هنا بنيجي نتكلم عن الفترة الانتقالية بعده برضو we'll talk about it. So let us go and talk about the interim the election. لأنه الانتخابات عندها شروط بتاعه. الناس الجيس هل الشروط بتاع قيام انتخابات في جنوب السودان الآن متوفرة؟ ده السؤال اللي دايرنا نجاوب عليه. we'll start with engineer Dominic. بعدين في observation بتاع الناس كلام اللي كتبناهم قبل ملاحظات. Put it down when we finish discussing all this. We'll come back and give 10 minutes to each of you to respond if you do حاجة داير تضيفه. So let us go to with engineer Dominic.
Okay, thank you, Edward. I will make use of my 7 minutes since you said we will respond to other things, but I wanted to make these things as a footnote. Let us not mistake federalism that people are asking for a separation, because this is the tragedy that is happening in the South Sudan that people wanted to very quickly link it, but we will come to that later. Edward, the shortest answer is no, but the longest answer is what I will try to deep on it. I agree with Adwok. There is the conditions in South Sudan for election is not favorable. Even under this agreement that has been signed in 2018, because the provisions of the agreement is so very clear, you know, with regards to the elections. And one of the important things as a milestone was the issue of the constitutional making process. Because by this agreement, the election would have to be done under a new setup, a new constitution, a new system of governance, something that the political forces of this country was supposed to sit and discuss. That did not happen because the agreement was not actually meant to be implemented. The agreement is lagging in terms of its deliverables. The agreement is going nowhere. Because if you look at the game charts of the agreement in terms of its implementation modalities, you will realize that the security arrangement, which is supposed to be the very big grantor of this agreement, is not in place. And this is one thing that Peter Adwok Nyaba has emphasized on. Number two, when you looked at the constituencies, and that is what we have discussed other day when we critique the talk of Aldo Ajawin, because if you looked at the favorability of the constitution, I mean the elections, it is nowhere to be realized. You know, currently we don't have an agreed election commission that is going to supervise the elections. Number two, we don't have a constituency that is known, because we need to do census that we will determine for us the geographical constituencies. We do not have the state constitutions. We do not have the agreement that has been actually factored into the constitution so that it becomes, you know, the legal framework for the implementations of these elections. We don't have a competent court, for example, because in any election there is irregularities. In the event there is an irregularities in the constitution, how are you going to address those irregularities? So the constitution, the constitutionality of this election is not going to be viable. Number two, we are dealing with a dictator.
A dictator like Salva Kiir knows the art of manipulations of these elections. Just as the election of 2010 was not fair, let us assume that this election is not going to be free and fair, because it is not in the interest of the partners of this agreement, in the persons of the SPLM in government, to lose elections. No, they have made all possible avenues in order to win this election. We know very well that the security apparatus of Akolkur is intact. It was not dismantled. Because under this arrangement, how do you even expect that these leaders are going to campaign? You know, the campaign is going to be marinated with intimidation. That is what we are going to see. So, I agree that elections need honesty, you know, from the people. Election needs all the ground to be put in place for the conduct of elections. And that is not there. The agreement has created a partnership, you know, and one of the partner is not being liked by the other partner. So what are you going to expect? You are going to expect that one of the partner is going to make life so very difficult. For example, in 2010, somebody like Lamakol, who is actually a presidential candidate, was not allowed to go and campaign. If we examine Riek Machar and the rhetorics that is being flamed against him, there is a general tendency and a tribal sections of a dislike that is being leveled against Riek Machar. If we were to ask this central question, will he really go and campaign in some of these areas? The answer is no. So there is no condition that is so favorable for this election. Otherwise, the election is going to be scam. It is not going to be free and fair. If we're not very careful, it's going to be a recipe of disaster and more war. You know, lest we do it in a proper way, let us forget about this election, because the conditions are not favorable and we're not going to see nothing of such kind. Because I have 1 minute, I'll lay my and I'll give you go ahead.
Thank you, Engineer Dominic. Thank you so much. Now we give the floor to Ambassador Emmnuel.
Thank you, Baz Mohandes. Yes, Professor Adwok did talk about the elections. And I agree with him that situation in South Sudan, given the insecurity, given the lack of democratic space, given the humanitarian crisis in our country, ده ما وقته عشان نتكلم عن الانتخابات. جنوب السودان what we need في جنوب الآن ليس انتخابات، رغم بأنه ورغم أهمية الانتخابات كوسيلة من الوسائل الحكومات الديمقراطية، وكيف ناس يعني انتخبوا الممثلين بتاعهم في البرلمان وفي الأجهزة الحكومية، لكن ما وقته. جنوب السودان الآن فيه عدم الاستقرار الأمني في كل أنحاء الجنوب، ولسه في اقتتال في مناطق في استوائية، في على النيل وفي بارغزال، في عدم السكيورتي. فالوقت مبكر جدا ان نحن نتحدث عن الانتخابات. الحاجه الثانيه المهم 3/4 بتاع المواطنين يا ثلث سكان الجنوب 3/4 وهم في بلدان المهجر. Many of our people are displaced. They're into refugee camps. So in order for you to talk about the election, you need to return them home first. You must build their houses. The government must be able to provide the basic social services so that people can go home. That is first thing you need to do. The second thing, of course, is a political comprehensive agreement where all the political forces in the country, be it in the opposition or the government, all of them can go back home and have an agreement that is acceptable to all of us, an agreement that addresses the root causes of the conflict in our country. Then after that, you go into what I call the democratization, creating a democratic space in our country, which means you have to register the political parties, and these parties must be able to participate in the democratic discourse without any harassment from the national security. Then after that, you also go to the legal aspect, which is the need to have a permanent constitution to be drafted. Once that permanent constitution is drafted, then it will be put into a referendum where the people of South Sudan will vote and to agree whether this constitution will be a covenant between them and their government. Then after that, you will talk about the census too, need to be carried on. And I agree with that, Adwok, you need more than a year to carry an accurate census of your population, because this will determine the political and geographic consistencies that you will have later on in the election. Then after that, you go to, to prepare yourself now for elections, and for the political parties also to build themselves so that, they could be able to stand in election. But if you go to election tomorrow, first of all, it's 1 year left from the interim period. 1 year is not enough to carry out all these things that I've talked about. The issue of the drafting of the constitution, the returns of the refugees back home and providing them the needed services, the issue also of census, time is not enough, the issue of democratic atmosphere that need to be created, and also the issue of time that's required for the political parties to be able to build themselves so that they could become viable, so that they could even give their programs. All these cannot be done in a 1 year calendar. It's impossible. My point of disagreement with Professor Adwok is the extension of the interim period. Adwok is talking about 10 to 15 years, so that all these benchmarks or all these issues that we have agreed that need to be done should be done within it. I think 10 years is a long time, in politics. My opinion is, humble opinion is 5 years. These 5 years also will be determined not only by just coming out and say والله بعد 5 سنين نمشي الانتخابات. لازم يكون يعني في تايم تيبل، لازم يكون في جدول. الجدول ده هيكون فوقه شنو المحتوى في الجدول. المحتوى بتاع الجدول ده الحاجات انا قلتهم قبل. اولا ترجع المواطنين دول لازم يرجعوا للغرة بتاعهم، ده واحد. 2 كتاب الدستور الدايم. 3 الإحصاء بتاع السكان في جنوب السودان. 4 التحول الديمقراطي المطلوب في جنوب السودان، لأن الأحزاب لازم يتشكل، والأحزاب لازم يدوم لهم الحرية، أوكي، بتتحرك، الحرية بتاع التعبئة، أوكي، ويأسسوا أنفسهم كأحزاب عشان يقدروا ينافسوا في انتخابات. ده بعد، وكمان الحاجة الخامسة كمان you need to have a comprehensive peace agreement. ده الحاجات يعني how to put it, these are the things that will determine, okay, these are the things that will determine the extension of interim period. To me, these are issues that can be achieved within 5 years, but not 10 years. So I will still argue that 5 years is a good interim period to achieve these issues that I've highlighted, and to implement the schedule for the elections to come. But now is not the time for elections. This is time to implement a comprehensive peace agreement, and also it's time for the government to negotiate with those of us who are outside and bring all the political forces into a national consensus where we could have stability in South Sudan and have election as the final thing. Thank you, Baj Mohandes. I've had a lot to talk, but time is running so fast.
Yeah, شكرا سفير. انت ذاتك مشيت للنقطة اللي بعده. It was good because you consume 7 minutes. انت اتكلمت عن البند الثاني على اننا كنا نتكلم فوق الموضوع بتاع الانتخابات، الموضوع بتاع الاكستنشن، لانه انا خليته يكون separately because we need also to deep in inside of it شوية. Let me give floor to Philiemon Daud. Take your 7 minutes في قضية بتاعت اللي هو قضية بتاعت election، لأنه we need to agree. ولو انتوا لاحظتوا، let me remind everyone in the podium down here والaudience، قبل فترة أتنوي كان يتكلم إنه لازم يمدوا الانتخابات، يكون في extension للانتخابات. our reaction was actually we did not like that. لكن لأنه government mindهم they don't have political will. But now الزمن قدامنا and we need to talk about all those things. How the government will implement the agreement and be serious and also they have political will. Let me give floor to Philiemon. معلش في زول عنده شبكته ضعيف انترنت بتاعه ضعيف جدا بالذات بتاع دكتور فرانسيس that while في مشكلة عندي هنا but it's okay. Philiemon, unmute yourself, please. Unmute yourself.
The issue of election, I think many people, they say it already correctly. I think to conduct elections 1 year from now is going to be impossible. And I totally agree with Dr. Nyaba that is not going to happen. There are so many reasons that why we see the election is not going to be conducted in 1 year from now. You have to look at the agreement. The agreement said it very clearly and made a timeline or timetable how the election is going to be conducted maybe after interim period. But now we stuck on the implementation of peace agreement. And one of the key to the conducive environment of election in South Sudan is the security arrangement, which also Nyaba mentioned very, very clearly yesterday. Elections, demanded the conducive environment, and also, the security sector need to be implemented in order for us to, bring our people back homes, and the census will be conducted. Then you will determine the numbers of the people that are going to vote. But now, if we say that, the government will push for the election, which means we are going back to war. Given the situation that when you look at the condition in South Sudan, people are so divided. How, political parties going to have their own space to preach their ideologies? It is very, very, it's very contagious situation that, can allow all the political leaders and political parties to go and have, their ideology to be preached to the people. So you also look at the areas of, the freedom of assembly and the freedom of expression is denied in South Sudan. So for the parties to go for the election, I think it is impossible. And now, so what we agreed is we have to make sure that all the protocols in the agreement need to be implemented first, particularly the security arrangement. You cannot, when you look at the situations, so to go from Juba to Melakal, there is no roads. Okay, how can you go to reach people in the rural areas if you want to conduct the election? These are the problems that we are facing. And Dr. Nyaba is right. Okay, so we need to look on the areas of how, there has to be a workout, agreement within the political parties, particular parties in the agreement. So if we see the implementation is not going, then what will be the next step that we can do as a political parties? We cannot want to take people back to war. This peace agreement is not a good peace agreement, but it can give a conducive environment for people to dialogue, people to talk what should be done, how we're going to conduct the election, how we're going to bring our people back home. And then later on, we can be, talking about, making the election, because election needs transparency, election needs security, election needs, all the people has to be stable in their homes. Election need people to understand that, once they go to the polling station, they know in their mind that nobody will intimidate them. But now in current situation in South Sudan, if you conduct the election now, already the number is determined like he mentioned yesterday. So it has happened in 2010, but I think this time if we go back, immediately election is going to be a declaration of war. And that is what I see. It is not important, even though, we in the IO came to, for the implementation of peace agreement. I think that will be the roadmap for all South Sudanese to make sure that this peace agreement need to be implemented fully, not, just partial. It has to be implemented fully in order for South Sudanese to have a platform that they can be determined their leaders. But now there is no any political space in our country, and that is going to be impossible for election to be done in 1 year from now. So that will lead also us into the, extension. I think it's very important, even though we are going to talk about this topic later after this. I see that idea is very important. Situation like South Sudan, whereby people culturally and tribal divided in tribal line. So we have to be careful how we're going to conduct the election. First, the peace agreement that we have in hand is now calm the situation, even though there is some minor cases, people fighting somewhere. So we have to make sure that, all the political leaders, they have to come to consensus that there is a great need for us to work collectively to address, the problems of South Sudan. And then, there has to be a political arrangement, which is the accommodations for all the political parties, even in the tribal line. There has to be tribes need to be accommodated in the system so that we can be able to determine the system that we want and work with their confidence and trust to build the system before we talk about the election. Okay, election will be the last resort when we have a viable system, a system that can protect the freedom of expression, the system that can protect the freedom of assembly. So like now, if in Juba now, political party will go and kick out their campaign, they will not be allowed. And this is the problem. This is the problem that, we see in our country. We shouldn't be talking about election now. Yes, Dr. Nyaba mentioned that because it is very important. Even he disagreed with the election. That is why he brought the, extension, the proposal of extension, and also bringing all the political parties to work out and make sure that there has to be an agreement if we want the well-being of our country. But if we are pushing for election now, it is going to be, we're going to take country back to war. Our country is not stable now. Our tribes are not stable now. Our politicians, mentally, they are not stable now because they see themselves not as a leaders representing the country. They see themselves as a leaders representing their own tribes. And that is problematic, that is problematic and alarming. So we have to be, focused and make sure that the ideas of election need to be taken out a little bit, even though I know that, IO is now working with the government, but it needs to be taken out. We need to concentrate it on the implementation of peace agreement, which is the security and all.
Sorry, Philiemon. Actually, I supposed to warn you or to remind you. Sorry for that. Already you actually ended your 7 minutes. Before I bring the next guest, خلوني نوضح حاجة للمشاهدين في يعني بالذات موضوع بتاع الانتخابات. وانا بتمنى انه الكونسيكونسز اللي قالوا قبل امباسادور ايمانويل قبل شويه واتكلم عنه دومينيك، برضو انا بتمنى فرانسيس والريس also to focus on that point. في تعليق كتبه هنا جوناثان سلاتايل، هو بيقول انه لو مثلا لو في مثلا زول بقى قاعد يحبي للحرب لو فقد انتخابات ده اسفل لما that is not true. حكومة زادوا سلفاكير لو هو زادوا فقد انتخابات أول زول هم عيالون حرب. Let us be honest. وده واحدة من القضايا اللي نحن نركز عليه كجنوبين. وأنا داير الباقي المتحدثين فرانسيس وريس later on as Ambassador Emmnuel and the rest of the speakers also make note on it when we come to the end. هو هل مثلا التنظيمات السياسية الموجود هسه في جنوب السودان are they ready actually to accept the defeat? We need to answer this question. Is the SPLM under the leadership of Salva Kiir Mayardit, they are ready to accept the defeat now when we go to election and they actually fail? Are they ready to accept the result? Let us be honest. We need to answer this. Another question also is the SPLM-IO, are they ready to accept the defeat if we go to election now? Accept the result? Ya Jamana, nobody is ready to accept the result now. Let us be honest. Bezat Hakuma na Selfakir, they will not accept it. Shubu, take example with Museveni. Did he accept the result of the election? He wrecked and he did whatever he can do to wreck the election. And this is possible to happen in the Republic of South Sudan. النقطة المهم اللي عندنا نركز عليها هسه والمتحدثين الباقين إذا نينا مثلا مشينا انتخابات معروف ناس ترجع للحرب، هل نينا مستعدين للحرب؟ يا جماعة أي حرب الآن، أي رجوع في الحرب، أي رجوع للحرب في جنوب السودان في الوقت اللي نينا فوق هسه ده بدمر دولة بتاع جنوب السودان. Already this country is collapsed now. The country economically is collapsed and we are coming to discuss that. So أي رجوع للانتخابات قبائل الآن عندهم ناس كله شايلين السلاح، الميليشيات السلاح عندهم منتشر، السوشيال فابريك في جنوب السودان is already finished done. So لو الناس رجعوا للانتخابات يا جماعة الناس هترجع للحرب. لذلك أنا قاعد أعتقد إنه there is not a time for South Sudanese now نسبش الانتخابات. We have a lot of things to do. Let us listen to Dr. Francis Malwal. Dictor, unmute yourself. Unmute yourself.
Okay, thank you. I think that we all have unanimous agreement that the election actually is not feasible within 2020 that is coming. But the problem is the extensions. Do we give the government the blanket go ahead with the opposition, which is the IO, to make the extension that they want, maybe 5 years, 10 years? And also, when we go back a little bit, when they signed this peace agreement, they're the one who put this down the timetable. So when you put a timetable for any project that you want to implement, you should know yourself and your capacity, whether you will be able to meet those timeline that you put for yourself. And it is an indication that these people, and this is the same thing that I've been talking, everything that is need implementation, it goes back to competency of the leadership. Because even if you give somebody who doesn't respect any timeline, okay, yeah, we call it procrastinator. Somebody who is habitually procrastinator never get enough time. So no matter this government, if you give them 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, they would never be ready to make all the environment and the atmosphere conducive for elections. And this is the big dilemma that we have, because actually these people, they are not competent. So what should we do? That's the question that we need to say. So, and that is the question that we need to answer. What should we do? And what is the incentive? What will make the government work so hard so that they can make everything that is required for election to be conducted? What incentive? What would make him going to do those things? There is nothing completely, as long as, because if they don't then provide the prerequisite for the elections, he knows, the government knows that the period, he will be given another extensions, and then we continue in this extension forever. And that's why the suggestions of Professor Adwok about the national democratic revolution coming, because since there is no stick on the government and the oppositions, that if they don't if you don't provide the conducive environment for the election going to be carried out, there is no extensions for you. This government has going to go, and then the people of South Sudan, they form maybe the technocrat government or any government going to come. Since you are not, if there is no threat like that, actually the government will not have any incentive going to have an institutions. So how do you force somebody who does not have political will to have political will? How do you change the incompetency of the leadership so that they can implement everything that is required for the election to be conducted? The second thing is the defeat. How do you force somebody who's been defeated if the election is conducted to accept that need institutions? And that institution, who will build it, is the current government. But is the current government qualified to build the institution? They will not do it. Of course, they will not do it. Look at the government in 2005 when the SPLM was united. There is no IO, there is no whatever, and all those things. The renovation of the ministries, which will already exist, took 7 to 10 years. So do you think these people, they are able to do anything? They will not do it. So basically, it is a very hard situation that we are in. And that's why we need, if we say that the AU, which is actually guarantor, they will force the government to conduct the election, they will not do it because they don't have any incentive to do that one. If we wait for the international community to come and force the government to do those things, they will not do it. So the only people that can do is the people of South Sudan to unite themselves. If we don't unite ourselves and we become a force that will be like a stick on the government, if you IO and the government don't implement the peace agreement and don't provide the environment that is required for the election to be conducted, you guys, we will go on the street, kick you out, and then we form a coalition government, this government that will be run. But if they know that after 10 years, 5 years, they will do an extension, I don't think that they will have any incentive to build the institution that is needed for democratic transformation in South Sudan. So that's the thing. So incompetency of the government is everywhere. If you want to implement, to do elections, you need competent government. So the system, even if you introduce the system of the federalism, will not take away the incompetence of the leadership that we have. And this is the question all of us, we try to avoid, and we bear our head and we don't want to do it. So, but it hands us everywhere. So basically that's what I can say. I don't have much to say. So we need to figure out how to force these people to.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you very much. شكرا جزيلا دكتور فرانسيس. انت يعني اسيرت نقاط مهمه، لكن انا ما داير اعلق عليه لانه انا داير المتحدثين ريس يتكلم، بعدك we go to the next topic بتاع extension لانه it's very critical الموضوع بتاع extension. I think my studio يا جماعه is getting low. I see there is some people the internet is not good actually, so it's loading my studio. So what I need الكلام قاله فرانسيس عن الاكستنشن هنيجي نتكلم عنه بعد شويه لانه انت اثرت نقاط مهمه جدا. يا جماعه studio is not holding. Let me try to do this. معلش يا اخوان. Charles, I have to kick you out. Wait. Francis كده وتعال come back again. Let me. Yes, yeah. Yeah, I think it's good now. So أنا داير أقول شنو؟ أنا داير أقول إنه دكتور فرانسيس come back. أنا داير أقول إنه أنا هنا بنتكلم عن الكلام اللي قاله دكتور فرانسيس في extension في التوبيك الجاي بتاع extension، لأنه this is the point where we need to talk about الكلام اللي قاله دكتور فرانسيس قبل شوية. أنا I know Dr. Emmnuel with Dominic and rest and Philiemon, they have point on that on extension. My opinion personally, Edward, extension with the government without any guarantee and political will is a waste of time. But we will talk about it when we come and hear from the guests. Let me give floor to Honorable Rest, and you give your comment on the election.
Thank you. Like I said earlier, Adwok was also giving his own opinion based on how the situation in South Sudan, and he was not actually saying whether election should not be done, but he was trying to point out what are the challenges that he sees. And he was also went as far as giving a suggestion to to the leaders. If they really do care for the country, they have to come up with alternative solution on how they could lead this country. He had looked into all the economic issues and he see that it may not be feasible. That is his own opinion. It's not actually opinion, but it's how he look at things and how he analyzed them. I disagree with everybody. I disagree 100% with everybody who's saying that this time is not good for election. First of all, if you say this time is not good for election, who that decision will benefit? And what conducive environment are you waiting for? What are you doing about it? These are the questions that we ask ourselves. First of all, we have the peace agreement. Right now, as we speak, these are the reality. The transitional period have not yet started. Right now, as we speak right now, that you don't know when the peace agreement is very clear. It's stated when the transitional period can start it, when it ended, and when election could be done. And during the election, there are a lot of processes like census. People said about conducting census and all this kind of thing. Now you don't know where you are now at the peace agreement. Don't lie to me that you know what is going on. Nobody knows right now where are we in peace agreement. Which stage are we? What have we done? We don't even know. Right now, we don't have a national legislative assembly. There is no security arrangement. The peace agreement is very clear to talk about when the transitional period started, and the things that were supposed to be done are not yet done. Okay, now we don't know where are we at the peace agreement. And to talk about extension, you just talk about the peace agreement. Which stage in peace agreement are we right now? And if you say that this environment is not conducive and not conducive, you are actually benefiting the government because this is what they want. Okay, now let's say, for example, the environment is not conducive for the election, for example. Now you are giving the government a chance because this is what they want, because they are not ready for election. And we're saying that the election is not conducive, the environment for the election is not conducive because there are problems that need to be set up, that need to be settled. Who is going to settle them? Of course, you are another one. The government is one in charge. And the government, deep down in their heart, they are not ready for election. And now you are saying at the opposition, this time is not good for election and all this. Now you have given a government a golden chance to delay everything that they are doing. I disagree. Election is needed because why? If we continue like this right now, whether this huge government was 5 by president, something that have never happened in the history, 5 by president, the resources are dwindling day and night. You have heard yesterday the oil has been sold out for 10 years. And you expect to live for 9 years without any oil revenue resources. And that is the only oil that we are depending on. So as long as we continue, the government will not set the conducive environment because they are not even ready for the change, because election would mean also the government may be defeated. So now you go and say it for whatever time you agree, the government now they are doing their own thing. This big government is consuming the little money that have remained in the country, and you will end up down the road without money. And people are there, as you know, a lot of the politicians, even some of the political party in South Sudan, they don't have, you can see from the way they talk, they do not have any idea about how you build a nation. There is an idea of, let me build a 2-people party, 3-people party, let me be part of any peace negotiation. When the positions are divided, maybe I will get 1 minister, 2 MP and all this. This is the idea on most of these small political parties right now. No political parties. You don't have to tell me, because when you talk as a political leader, people will see from what you say that you are actually a national leader, because you are projecting anything to do with how this nation can be built. But everybody now create 2, 3 people, 10 people parties for them to be part of the national cake. I can create my own 3 people parties, and I said I'm a political party, then I be part of any peace agreement, whether in Rome and Addis and all this, then given a chair, and then I will keep quiet. I do not actually have an idea of how this country can be built. This is the challenge right now. We have now the government is controlling everything, and we go down for whatever time we agree, and later on, after the money is finished, this big government with 5 vice president, 500 MP, and all this official, and everybody who will form another 2 people party, add in the government, increase the number of the National Assembly, and also increase the number, you don't know, even the 5 vice president and all this kind of thing, we will end up tomorrow, do not have money. There is no money. What will happen? We will go down back to war again that we are trying to avoid right now. So now the situation of South Sudan, to be honest here, the future down the road, 10 years, 5 years from now, doesn't look good at all. That is war. You will not avoid it because nobody is working to avoid the war. Because the things that are happening right now can actually lead us down the road to fight. I would suggest that I would prepare. We can go to election as soon as next year. Since we don't have a timeline for the peace agreement, the only thing that remains that we can change South Sudan is an election. Because election, you will do it because there is nobody who is working in this country to make sure that that country can prosper. And then you need to make sure that election can change because you will have new faces. Maybe you will create a force that can change the dimension of how the things are working in South Sudan. But here you talk about election. Who can be the force that can deter the government to conduct a political? These are the people of South Sudan. And if to hold the government in check.
Sorry, Honorable Res, you are 7 minutes, they finish. Lakin, yani Honorable Res, actually you have raised very important points. And me myself, I do agree with you. بالذات الموضوع بتاع extension بتاع transitional period. We need to come back and talk about it before we close the show. We have 2 things we have to come back. Already I noted that down. النقطة المهم لنا كلنا اللي هي ما هي الخيارات التي تبقت لدينا كشعب في جنوب السودان. الناس قاعدين في اللايف فيديو هنا امبارح انا طرحت سؤال للبروفيسور أدوك نيابا. أنا سألت سؤال. And let me remind the audience and also the speakers in the podium. أنا سألت سؤال للبروفيسور أدوك الاكستنشن اللي هو قاعد يتكلم فوقه لمدة 10 years to 15 years. هل الاكستنشن ده هو يعني متعلق بحكومة ده هتتغير ولا الحكومة ده ما راح تتغير؟ ده كان سؤال. هل الحكومة ده مثلا اكستنشن تغيير بتاع رياض مشار وسلفاكير ميارديد ولا اكستنشن ده يكون شغله كيف يا جنوبين؟ And this is what we are coming to discuss now. أنا داير الناس المتحدثين they need also to pay attention to this. The emotional talk أنا معايا Edward will not help me alone at all. I don't like emotional talks. You know, we have to be serious when we are handling kind of these issues. We need, before I bring Emmnuel Ajawin, I will going to bring him first when we are going to talk about the issue of the extension. Professor Dugi was talking إنه extension لازم يكون لمدة 10 سنة أو ل 15 سنة وقدم مبررات بتاعه. لكن the question will remain أنا سألته له امبارح. Extension under who? Under Salva Kiir Mayardit as a president and Riek Machar as vice president. الاكستنشن ده تاد برلمان الوزراء حكومة الوزراء عنده 34 وزير 34 minister plus 15 deputy ministers, and this is the government we are talking to extend. Another question also, we are going to extend الgovernment البرلمان بتاعه ما يقارب 500 عضو الأعضاء بتاعه 550 sorry يعني قريب ل 600. It never happened in the earth. Even the country like China, the country like Ethiopia, the country like United States of America, which are billions of population, their senators, their senate, they even does not reach to 300 and whatever. And in a kind of extension, a poor country, المايندهم يعني criteria واضحة للدولة وللمرتبات. البرلمان بتاعه 500. Are we going to extend the period for 10 to 15 years ل 500 عضو برلمان؟ 5 نواب بتاع رئيس مع رئيس 6. We are joking, Junubin. Here we are joking. Let us go and listen to Ambassador Emmnuel Ajawin. In this point, if it's needed, I will add more minutes so we'll make it 10 minutes. But for now, it's 7 minutes. If it is needed, it depends on the speakers. If it's needed, we need to add more minutes. So we have to talk about this. And everybody in Juba, you need to watch this show tonight. And even especially the topic we are coming to talk about it, because ده قاعد يحدد المستقبل بتاعتنا بتاعت جنوب السودان، مستقبل بتاعت الشعب بتاع جنوب السودان. الحكومة ده شغل بتاع غش والاستهبال داير يصل هنا. So we need to be careful. Let us listen to Ambassador Emmnuel Ajawin.
No, thank you, Baj Mahandis Edward and audience. The issue that we're going to be discussing is very important and it's interesting, and I hope you will give me an ample time so that I will have enough time to really go into the details of what is the way forward. But before I do this, I think there's a consensus. There's a consensus across the board that this is not the time for elections, given all the issues that we have raised earlier. Now, what is the way forward? First, I need to make the footnote as follows. The revitalized RCS has already collapsed. RCS has already collapsed. And this is not just a generalization or overstatement. If you look at the implementation metrics and the schedule upon which the revitalized RCS was built on, we are almost approaching to the end of the interim period as prescribed or as stated in the so-called revitalized RCS, and nothing has been achieved. For example, fundamental issues, the security arrangement. To date, there's no national army, there's no national security. And any agreement to succeed, the security arrangement is the important pillar. Security arrangement is the important pillar for any implementation of the agreement. The security arrangement now is nowhere. On Monday, when Matian Cirillo will be airing his interview with Michael Mokwenlue in the abstract that he's already sent in the YouTube and the Facebook, what did Mokwe say about the graduation of the unified forces? Mokwe said that some of the forces will graduate with their guns and others will graduate with their sticks. يعني قال في جيش هيخرجوهم جزء بالسلاح بتاعهم وفي جزء هيخرجوهم بأكاكيسهم في يدينهم. Now IO and other opposition forces will be graduated with the sticks. It shows there is no good intention. The agreement, the revitalized RCS has collapsed. Talk about the returnees of the people of South Sudan back home to their homes. The agreement has not done anything, and the economic collapse, and so forth. So we as South Sudanese, we must agree that agreement has collapsed. What is the way forward? And this is what I'm coming to. The way forward, number one, is to go back to the drawing board. It's for the government now that exists, what we call the de facto government, not actually the de jure government, but it's a de facto government, for them to reach out to all the political forces outside the country so that we could have a comprehensive peace agreement with all the stakeholders in the country. This is the first step. So the first step will be to reach out to all the political forces inside and outside the country, youth and women organizations, so that we could sit down around the table and agree on the root causes of the conflict and come up with a comprehensive peace agreement. That's the first step. The second step that we need to look at, once we agree on this, there's a need of restructuring. There's a need of restructuring the governance in the country. Which means what? It means the two gentlemen, Salva Kiir and Dr. Riek, they should not be part and parcel of the new arrangement that South Sudan will be undergoing for, let's say, an interim period where the political forces, be it the nationalist revolutionary movements or whatever, the consensus will be built. There is a need to restructure the governance system in the country, and hence the two gentlemen that have been found wanting by the majority of the people of South Sudan, they must step aside. They must step aside from the political discourse and the political arena in South Sudan. And their parties, of course, can nominate anybody else apart from these two gentlemen. That is the second step. The third step is to come up with a new system, a system that will be able to implement the agenda which the political forces in the country would agree upon. We will have only one president, and it will be a ceremonial president. We should have only a ceremonial president. And then we create an office of a prime minister. So you will have a president and a prime minister in the country. The prime minister will be running the executive branch of the government. Number 3, you will have a new National Assembly or parliament constituting of equal numbers of all the political forces, women and youth organizations. Women and youth, they must be given also good number in the national parliament, and all the political forces in the country. Nobody should have a majority in the MPs. Nobody should have a 2/3 majority in the new national parliament. We will have a lean government. We don't want to have 34 ministers. We want a very lean government of not more than 18 ministers. So that, and these ministers will be based on their competence, okay? And these ministers will be running the affairs in our country, and they will be monitored, and they will be answerable to the National Assembly that will be run by the Prime Minister. Then you also have to talk about the need of creating a unified army and national security. That is important, and it is essential that a national security forces must be established in the country. After that, this, and also, now let us come, after the structural governance, we have formed it. President, you have abolished the 5 vice presidents. You have a president, which is ceremonial. It could be anybody, and it doesn't have to be one of the party's members. The president could come from any of the personalities in South Sudan, a neutral person to be the president. Because the work of that president during that interim period, which all will agree as political forces and other organizations, youth and women, is only to see into it that the agenda that will be agreed and adopted by all the political forces is implemented. So we want a ceremonial president. The prime minister will be answerable to the national parliament, which means the parliamentarian, they will grill the prime minister because they will debate with the prime minister. That's why we say the prime minister will be the head of the executive branch of the government. And hence, this prime minister will be answerable to a competent parliament. So that we don't want someone far away. We want to close the gap between the leadership and the representative of the people in the parliament. Now, you come to the national program, a program that will be that will set up the agenda for this interim government to work on. One of the first steps that the interim government will work on is the issue of humanitarian affairs, returning of the refugees, and the internally displaced people in the POC camps. They must be returned to their homes, and social services must be provided for them, which means schools, hospital, clean running water. I think I'll go on a little bit, Edward, because 1 minute is not enough. The second issue of the program that they will have is building an economical, viable federal republic of South Sudan. Therefore, there's a need to revisit our economic policy. South Sudan is collapsing. We need a Marshall Plan to rescue the economical situation in our country. The other issue that they will need to do is the issue of building infrastructure across the country. The other one is the establishment of a democratic atmosphere so that the political forces in the country could germinate. We need a free atmosphere, a free political discourse that is far from intimidation by the national security elements. These are the things that we need to have. Inter alia, of course, is not an exhaustive list, but this list could be extended and could be agreed upon by all the political forces in the country. This is what we need. Give me 2 more minutes. So these are the steps that are required to move on. We are not agreeing.
Before I give you, Ambassador, before I give you, I think free someone internet without taban here. Because how many are
when we talk about the extension, it's not the extension of the life of this government you have in Juba. The government you have in Juba, they have failed. The agreement has collapsed because 3 years is coming to an end soon. You cannot have an election. And although election was the end product, is envisaged end product of the agreement, is not possible. Therefore, any extension we are talking about will not be within the parameter or the parameters of the agreement that you have. RCS has died, RCS should be buried. The extension that we are talking will be an extension of a new government, or not even, you may not even call it an extension. You may call it a need to reestablish or to establish a new government of national unity that encompasses all the stakeholders in the country, the political forces, the youth and women organizations. This is what we are talking about extension. We are not talking extension about this agreement under Kir and under Riyak. And we want a new political dispensation. That is the only way South Sudan, in my opinion, could move into more stable and a federal democratic republic. Thank you, Edward.
Thank you, Ambassador Emmnuel. أنا ما أعرف شبكة بتاعي بقى ضعيف في يعني there is some people down there their internet is so weak so it's affecting the system. But before we proceed في سؤال بعدين أنا هنا دايرين الحل يعني أنت لما تدي أفكار how can you implement those ideas? Before we go ahead, let me welcome my brother, Comrade Jerkway, and I'm going to give him 7 minutes to make comment on this specific topic, which is extension. Jerkway, I'm going to give you 7 minutes. You came late actually, but it's okay to have you on the forum. Yeah.
Thank you, Edward. Thank you, Edward and Emmnuel. I watched the interview of Professor Adwok with Mathiang Chirilo. Then I watched the one you had with him. And I was so impressed that it has ignited a debate within our country. As you all know, I've been in Australia for the last 5 years. I've at least hesitated a bit from getting engaged in the politics of South Sudan since my SPLM DC days. So what I just want to say is about this one point that Professor Adwok seemed to have touched that actually reached to everybody. The one for the extensions of a transitional period. The reason I say the extension of transitional period is a very important point. Professor Adwok didn't explain, and I think he asked Matiang Chirilo that, Matiang, you did not ask me what need to be done and how it should be done. The same thing Emmnuel was trying to bring up, that who is going to extend under what government. One of the reasons I support the extension of the peace agreement and not go for election is both Salva Kiir and Riek Machar cannot produce a conducive atmosphere for a peaceful election. And if they cannot produce an atmosphere for a productive election, then it is important for us, especially those who are younger than them a bit, instead of antagonizing them, they need to be assured of their continuity in a different format, not the format it is now. Like what Professor Adwok said, he said, we need an infrastructure development, we need education, we need political atmosphere where people can talk, a political dialogue. If you can provide those dialogues, those infrastructure development, while them still in the power, it will be far better for us than forcing them to go to election that will produce the result that we all know. Why I believe that it is important to maintain in a different atmosphere, to maintain Riek and Kiir compared to those who are behind them. Look, for example, what happened when Riek was chased out of 2016. The biggest players were not even Riek. Where is Samuel Dong? Where is Agri? There are people apart from Riek and Kiir that are more dangerous to the future of this country than maintaining the two. So I support the principle that we need to extend their period, but not in the form of which it is now. But how can we do that? That's what I was coming in with some suggestion. The only way you can extend the transitional period in a different form than where it is actually to assure these people in power that we are going to support you, and the condition of extension are 1, 2, 3, 4. If they know that the condition of their extension are clear and they are not threatened anymore to be tossed out of power, they may be able to work with us who are supporting the extension than work with those who are among the 5 vice presidents who want them to exit. So on this very specific point, I believe Dr. Adwok touched a nice point, but we need more dialogue on this. How can we do it? So that's the point I wanted to jump in. I hope I've made sure, but if you have anything, you can tell me.
Yeah, that is good, Jerkway. I will put you down, and also we'll still continue with the discussion. And later on, if you need to, it's really very terrible. في مشكلة في إنترنت يا جماعة، في ناس عندهم إنترنت. Let me bring Dominic.
Okay, thank you. I listened extensively to Adwok on the issue of extensions, and I also listened to the other colleagues that have just gone down. I am one of the people who are totally in opposition to the extension, and I have my reasons. The dangerous precedence that we have set as the people of South Sudan is always to appease leaders. And in appeasing leaders, we try to give them consensus. That is actually dangerous to the precedences of the democratic revolution that we are trying to ask. Because the people have failed in gaining their trust and confidence in those guys. Now, why do we have to give these people extensions? And under what premises do we have to give this extension? Is it because we wanted to appease them? Is it because they have fighting force? Then at least we should now organize ourselves so that we take them out as a way forward rather than agonizing. Because if you looked at the agreement, there is no any other point in time where you can be able to sit and say the agreement is being implemented in 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 so that we can be able to give them the extension.
Because from 2018 until today, the lack of the political will to implement these things was not there. So where are you going to bring this political will from? Is there a market? Because you are dealing with the same people. And Salva Kiir is a culprit. The likes of Malcolm Makwe is a culprit. There was a president in the Addis Ababa that says that, these duos are not going to work together. That was said. It was being proved to us, and it will continue to be like that, even if you extend the whole thing 10 to 20 years. So the premises under which this extension is going to take place is not there. But again, let us draw our attention to some of the things that were said during the times of the negotiations in Addis Ababa as a way forward. We are all aware that any extension under the same thing will continue. Will just continue the sufferings of the people of South Sudan, which Adwok spoke about. And I agree with him. 15 years we've been suffering. It has been so much time in the life of the people. I believe another extension of 10 years without a formidable program will continue to generate more suffering to the people of South Sudan. Because these guys, they are there to loot the country without impunity. They have the security organ will continue to kill the people. They will continue to rape. So there is no any other premises under which this agreement should be extended. Not even in the interest of appeasing these leaders, because they have failed. So the only way that is out of this mayhem is the government of the technocrat. Why? Because the current leaders are all culprits, and they have fallen short the glory of South Sudan. And who are you going to tell not to be present? And that is what Adwok alluded to. How are you going to take them? Because they control the political kings. They are the controllers of the political discourse in South Sudan. So if we are to come and sit and agree on a transition, that transition must be outside the current dispensations. And the best people that could be able to take these things is a government of technocrats, people who have not been there. What could have happened is that the SPLM and all other these political processes of this country must be given ample time to go even and organize themselves at their political parties. Number one. Number two, then you have to have a program where all the political forces of this country must agree on it. And this is what the government of technocrats is going to work on. We have already talked of the constitution. I think in the roadmap must be very clear in terms of these building blocks. The constitution of the country must be put in place. One, the issues of census must be made abundantly clear. The issues of repatriations of the people, issues of confidence, must be put there. Issues of hybrid court must be put in place so the perpetrators of these crimes must be brought into books. Issues of governance system, which we have talked earlier, because you cannot, jumpstart. And then and there, South Sudan have to go for a strategic national planning, where all the facets that we think is very important for South Sudan to see light will have to be discussed by the people of South Sudan. And I agree, because the thesis has been that few people are actually giving themselves the leverages, to be the king makers of the politics of South Sudan, and others have to follow them. And that is the danger here. Now, if you ask yourself about the democratic forces that need to make change, how are they going to make this change? And how are they going to believe that the change they are going to make? Because remember, there is always leaders. Things don't fall from their own from the skies. There must be leaders to steer these things. So the extension without a political program is just a recipe for more disasters, because the two gentlemen will never usher a political transition that is free of all these hurdles and shortcomings, because the shortcomings are done by design. It is not that these people cannot really sit. This is what Adwok have said. Can we not, as South Sudanese, come and sit and agree and say this country is for all of us, and therefore we need to put this country on a right foot? I guess we can do it. But because the lack of will is not there, we will continue to appease these leaders. And that is so dangerous. So extension for the sake of extension, 10 years. And Salva Kiir does not have the qualifications. He doesn't have the mental preparedness to rule this country. 10 years will just be the same. Salva Kiir is what I have said. He has reached his mental saturation. No matter what you do, you will never give ideas to these gentlemen. So it is dangerous as a president. I'll stop here because
Thank you, Edward. You surprised me. I thought another person was coming. Actually, it's good that you let us conclude our point. Like, I was trying to make a point and you cut me abruptly, and people went ahead and misunderstood. They were saying that I see comments saying that I called for election. That means that they were not understanding what I was trying to make, and it's good that we can finish our point that we want to make. That's why it is very important, because Dr. Adwok is being misunderstood, because Dr. Adwok was just analyzing the situation. I've been saying that a long time, and he did not even call for the election, and he did not refuse to go for election, and he did not call for extension. He was giving example of what should be done based on the situation. I think a lot of people are now are ignorant about the reality. That is why I see people talking about, the peace agreement has collapsed, and it has, like it is something that you can, brush away and come up with another thing. You can have an idea of a lot of people opposed to this peace agreement, including myself, because of the dishonesty that I see in the peace agreement, and I have not been quiet about that. But the reality of peace agreement right now, what forced Adwok to analyze about the peace agreement, that forced him to say that we better, focus on the peace agreement and try to make it work, is because that is a reality right now. Because if you come from Bulu singing a very beautiful song without instrument, you are going to end up having no audience. Because you could say it can attract people now, but it will end up you will not achieve anything with it. The reality on the ground is what we are talking about. Like when I talk about election is better in a short time now than it down the road, there are some aspects that I'm considering. The issue of you continue with this with a lack of will and people are not willing, because we have evidence that the peace agreement is not being implemented. Peace is not being implemented, but it has not collapsed right now completely. Okay? And you will not take it away like that. You said, okay, you have to come with a prime minister, a beautiful song, like you want to do a new thing. It will not work that way. It needs a program. That is why we're saying that for us to go to election, there are a few things that need to be done. If I have finished, would have finished my point. I was coming to issue of people who are, scattered around the neighboring country and all this. That issue, when we are just talking about the election, you can actually talk about the challenges that face election. But now election, based on what we are talking about, people are saying that, we cannot go to election. And I'm saying that if we say that we cannot go to election, you are given a government a chance to continue ruling us with iron peace, with all the things that are happening, because government is not willing. What I'm trying to say is that we can demand for election, but it shouldn't go that you go to election prematurely like this. Okay? You cannot go prematurely like this. You have to set up a condition. And the condition is that this is the point that I'm trying to talk about, that there has to be a force that help the government accountable. Like, for example, there are opposition now that talk about, like, I've been hearing that, you have to have a new government, the peace agreement has collapsed and you have to take it away and all this kind of thing. So what is being done? Now we have only some opposition that are negotiating peace in Rome. Sooner than later, or later, for example, they will be part of that government. And don't get me wrong, they are going to be observant to that government, because this is all about this peace agreement, because we know the content of this peace agreement, the content of it, is all going to be signed. They are going to all go and be part of this government. Okay? So election that you should do 10 years or 5 years during the, I am completely opposing the election, the extension, because I know Adwok was not demanding it. He was suggesting it. If people have a national feeling, there are things that are not good right now that need to be settled. And if he were to be the two leaders, they can sit down at the national patriot and create a separate program, because he knew that the peace agreement was not working. And that is where my concern comes from. Let us not run away from the reality, because if we do not consider the reality on the ground, we will not come out with a real solution. The reality is there is a peace agreement. People are saying they are being implemented, and now you have the government put together half of it. It is not clear whether we are in which stage, like I say, in the transitional period, which I'm concerned about, because I know the peace agreement has not been genuine, have not been honest. And if it is honest, now we still have the government of Salva Kiir, the one in power in the country, is the one controlling everything. So whatever you do it in favor of Salva Kiir government. I am trying to say a different thing here. Okay, if we want this government to continue, let's say, okay, let the election be extended, let everything. The situation is not going to get okay. The environment will not get conducive, because the environment does not pollute itself. It was polluted by people, and the people who pollute the environment, they are still there. And there was an intention of why to pollute the environment to bring the country to where it is now. So if you know that, you have to plan against this program. And for me, I am saying that this system of confusion cannot take us for 10 years, for 5 years. There have to be new things that is need to be done. But new thing will not be you are ignorant of the peace agreement and the people who are now in the government. You have to be mindful that they are there. And for you to say that you don't want them, this is by itself a declaration of war. Are you ready to fight the war now? Edward, give me more minute to finish. Just 2 minutes. I just want to conclude it. Don't cut me. So what I'm trying to say is that election should not be extended. Let's do the priority. Let's prioritize it. We have a role to play now. If we want this country to go forward, let all focus on how this peace agreement can work successfully. If this is what we want, because without correcting what is wrong now in the peace agreement, you will not do anything, because we will stuck with these people. They are now working on something that they believe it is something that they are working. The international community is supporting it. So now let's come back and forget all about all this thing. Let's say, okay, let's correct what is wrong in the peace agreement. Why the peace agreement is not working, and this is where we should start. And this is where I'm coming from. It is not that I'm calling the election right now, but all of us who want to do new things, we better come out clearly and you develop your own forces and do the right thing. And Adwok say that either you go to war or make a revolution. These are the solutions that will help us out of this confusion and all this. And whatever we are saying, whether it look beautiful, it would look attractive, if it does not match practically with what is going on the ground, it will not help us. It would be just a beautiful song without the studio to think it or all the instrument and all this. This is what I'm trying to say. So I think we cannot go so far for election. We have to do it as soon as possible and hold the government and count the day when we are going to have that election. So thank you.
Okay, welcome back again. I think there is a conflict of interest that is going on here. So we have a situation, and we need Gunu to understand, that is not my position, but I need Gunu to analyze the situation that we are in right now. You have one thing, either you do extensions or you don't do extensions. So what could happen if there is no extension? If we don't give Gunu the government the extensions, don't allow Gunu the government to do the extensions, the agreement will expire, the government will lose the legitimacy. And then when people to negotiate with the government, you negotiate in a one term. It's a legitimate government, you are opposition, you don't have any legitimacy because you are not elected and whatever, and all those things, that you could be able to negotiate well and form something. The other scenario, if we give an extensions, the extensions, for those people who are calling to Kir and react, to get out of power, that is a dreams actually, because there is no dictator there is no dictatorships in the world that has been dismantled by agreement. You call him, okay, you step down, and then what? They will never accept that, and that is the reality. And that's why I agree with Rest, because these people, they will not give up. They will not give power. They are entitled for these things. So how do you force them? Because you see, in 2013, they went to the grassroots, they surveyed, the grassroots is spoken. What happened to that grassroots consultation? They throw it away because they didn't like what has come from the grassroots. Also, Kiir called for the national dialogue, and national dialogue made recommendations that they don't want to react, and when they didn't like the recommendation of the national dialogue, they will throw it away. Because anything that will dismantle and take away the power from them, they were not assented to it. So how do you force them? That's the questions. So basically, if you say, okay, like the way that Emmnuel was saying, a proposal is a nice proposal, but it's impractical, because these people, they will not just give up. Unless you fight them also. IO fought for 7 years, didn't get anything. At the end of the day, he settled and made an agreement. And even after you make an agreement, what is the guarantee that the agreement will be implemented? Nothing. So we are in a big dilemma. So the only hope is what? Is the same thing that we say, that we need a peaceful national democratic revolutions. So unless the people, they come to the extent that they unite themselves, if they stay in their houses, they will die, because there is no salaries, there is no any service, and that way. So if they stay in their house, they will die. If they go outside on the street and they demonstrate and kick out the government, there is a 50-50 scenario where you may survive, or you may kill, or you may be wounded. So which one is better? That's the situation, the environment that will dictate itself. But to say that the government will just, Kiir will say, okay, you guys, you don't want me, and I'm going, and Kiir will go, it will not go. Because Kiir stated frankly, where is my incentive? So what is his incentive for him to dislanguish the power? And what power do you have to force him to step down? You don't have that one. But you need the power of the people. So you need to organize these people and put a pressure on the government and the oppositions. That is the only way that we can be able to force them, because this thing is not just only for to do the right thing in politics. It's not the right thing. Is the reconciliation of those forces. The government have the upper hand. IO is following. The rest, they are followed. They don't have. If you don't have power, you don't have army. You will not force anything to the government, and there is no way that you could tell Salva Kiir to step down. So this is one thing. The other thing also, if we wait, we endorse them. They do the extensions. They are incompetent. They will not be able to provide the conducive environment that you need for the election to take place. So what would happen? Why? Because in South Sudan, economy is deteriorating every day. Yesterday is better than today. How? Because when we inherited South Sudan in 2005, has billions of dollars. Right now, after 15 years, what do we have? The government have already sold the oil for 10 years, coming 10 years. Okay? So basically, we don't have anything. So by the time that we have another 5 years, the current today will be better than the 5 years that is coming, because the government is deteriorating every day. The economy is deteriorating every day. Because why? Because we have an incompetent government. And that is the problem that we don't want to accept. All these political positions, the political party, they assume that the leaders are good. There is no problem. The problem about the system. So if you change the system, the leaders will do the right things and they implement. Even those who are Ajawin, are they negotiating for what? What is the guarantee that the government will come and implement the Rome Agreement and he didn't implement the RCs? There is no guarantee. There is nothing. So the only way that we could be able to get out from these stagnations is for the people of South Sudan to realize their power. People, they are always the power. And even all these nice democracies that you see, if the people are not behind it, the government will not do the right thing. And there is no government on earth that did the right things when they know actually the people are weak and they would not be able going to hold them accountable. There is no elections. You see right now, when you look into American politics, every representative of senators take the decision based on what will please their base. Why? Because if they don't do what please their base or what please their constituency, he's going to pay the price because the people will change him. Until if we don't have the such kind of thing, we will not be able to force those to do the right thing, the leaders. And that's why there is no incentive for the government to make everything right so that the people can return back and then people can conduct the elections. And the election that will kick him out of power, he will not do that. He will not do that peacefully. So we, the people of South Sudan, the choice is ours. Is either we want to just folding our hand and watch, and then we keep dreaming and wishing that the situation will change itself, or by just talking that Kir will distinguish, or by going into the national dialogue and say we don't want Kir and Riek, Kir will pack his thing, and Riek will pack his thing and leave the political arena to those peoples. It will not happen. There is no technocrat that will be formed unless the people went to sit and they kick out governments. And that's why I prefer not to do any extensions. The election will not be carried out. The time will expire. The government will be a legitimate government. The opposition, you will have the probability of forming a shadow government, and then you negotiate on equal terms. At that time, actually, the government, because the government has no legitimacy, you don't have legitimacy, you can be able to come on equal term. But provide that you have the support of the majority of the people, and that would not happen unless the people of South Sudan put aside their differences and they unite together and face the threat that is coming. Otherwise, we will just continue dreaming here.
Thank you, Edward. I've been listening to some of my colleagues here on the studio, and I differ with them in the way they concluded their argument on the extension. Dr. Peter Adwok made it a political and understandable conclusion that in order for South Sudan to be a peaceful country, there has to be an extension. That is his opinions, and that is the opinion that I agreed with him. The extension is very important. Why extension is very important? So we want the extension to do things right. And you also ask about extension will be under who? I think that question will go back to the extension has to be and should be under Kir and Dr. Machar, so that they can be able to do things right. And the people, the whole out, opposition, they have to, speed up the Rome, and they can be in. There has to be a consensus that they have to be in, so that extension should help South Sudanese to address the root causes of the problem that they are talking in Rome. That is the most important thing we have to look on it. Why we need that? I think there is a lot of problems. Sometimes we blame the people that ruling us, but to me, I see in different ways. The problem in South Sudan is the people, not the leaders, because leaders form from the people. When people are bad, the government will be bad. When the people are, not ready for change, then the government will not be ready for the change. And this should be understandable for everyone who is looking for the solution and change in our country. This agreement is not collapse. I totally disagree with my colleagues, Ambassador Emmnuel. This peace is not collapse. This peace is stranded and is still on the process to make sure that we need to make things right. And it needs all of us. There's somebody told me that in 1992, Namanes Pelem Kandere Yadrup Juba, they sent two people. Ashan Yadrup يعني كبر بتاع Juba. So these two people, they have been told when you go there, انت فجر مع grenade وخلاص انت ممكن تمشي مع تموت مع the grenade. But you know what? When they reach to the bridge, they escape. They didn't conclude it because they're afraid to die, And that is the problem I see with us South Sudanese. The problem of change in South Sudan is not the problem of the government. You look at the politicians that are dividing based on their ethnic line. You look at the small opposition like NDM, PF, that only branded out and looking for their own slide or pizza. That is the problems. You also see the problems of people that seen in the neutral, and they don't want to be a part of the process and transformation, and they want change. What change that you're looking when you are neutral and you are so you don't want to be a part of the process of the transformation and change in the country? These are the problems. To me, extensions that put it by Professor Nyaba is very important. Why is important? The first thing is it will give a conducive environment for the leaders to do things right. They may not have fear of being taken out from the position, but they can work hard to make sure that things has to be right. And I believe that Professor Nyaba mentioned that, because the love of the country, extension is not done in terms of being in leadership, but it should be done based on the loves of country that we want to have on the future. And when the extension happened 10 to 15 years, yes, I know that the nature also will resolve to some of the crazy leaders that we have in South Sudan with these 10 years, okay? And we have to look at when we extend it, or the extension period will be 10 to 15 years, then you look at you take away the ideas of election, because election is not feasible. It's not, it's not logic in the time that we are in the crisis. You can take election out, but what you have to look on during the time of extension, the first thing you need to look to build the institutions. And building the institution, then you need leaders that collectively will be working together to make sure that the mistakes that have happened should be addressed. And also it can create a conducive environment that you can open the centers for studies, economic studies, centers for security studies. Even we can also open the centers for those who are defecting all the time, don't want to stay in one place. These are the things that we need to look on it. And during the extension, we can do things right. We tried so many times and it failed. So if it is failed, then we need to look at the way forward that we want to hand the country to the next generation based on something that we can do during the time of extension. And that time, I think many people agree. Those of Ria, those of Kir, they might be working because they will calculate their, okay, give me some 2 minutes that I will conclude it, because it is very important. I'm seeing this extension is very important. I agree with it. It can give